Okay, good morning. Thanks for everyone coming out in person. I know some of you have traveled really far away to get here to sunny Arizona. So thank you for doing that. We appreciate your time. Thank you for the virtual audience who are joining. If you're stuck in snow, too bad you're not here in Arizona, but we'll make this a fun day for you as well. I'm Bon Ku. I'm a program manager at ARPA-H, and we're excited to launch Paradigm here. And what is the purpose of Proposers Day? This day is for you to learn about a program, make sure you're applying to the correct technical area, to engage with our team, and also to meet each other. So there's a tremendous opportunity here. There's leaders from all over the country representing academia, business, public sector. There's a chance here for you to meet each other. And we encourage that. For those who are online, please sign up on our teaming page. This is the agenda for today. All times here are Mountain Time, so please adjust accordingly if you are on the coast. And I just want to thank all in advance, all the speakers who have both come in person and virtually for today as well. There's a chance this afternoon for a poster session, and that's going to be after lunch. So that's only going to be for the in-person attendees. A couple of housekeeping items. Do not submit questions in the Zoom chat for those joining virtually. We will ignore them. Instead, there's a link in the chat where you could ask your questions. And for those in person as well, there's a chance to ask questions on our TA-specific afternoon sessions. But if you want to ask questions online, just go to our Paradigm page under Ask a Question. Please not put any proprietary information in your questions because they would be posted publicly. A few other housekeeping items. We're not allowing outside food and beverage here. Online, you can eat whatever you want. We don't really care. And we will not be sharing an attendee list, so we encourage people to sign up on the teaming page. Before we dive into Paradigm, I'm going to kick it off to our Deputy Director, Gina Coast. She is the Deputy Director in the Resilient Systems Office. That's the one I'm part of. And prior to joining ARPA-H, she spent over a decade at DARPA, where she played a pivotal role launching and overseeing a number of biomedical programs. And before that, she directed research and development at a clinical stage pharmaceutical company and holds a doctorate in pharmacology. Gina is way smarter than me, and she's going to give you an overview of the Resilient Systems Office and what we are doing at ARPA-H. So welcome, Gina.
Hi, good morning, everyone. It's so great to see so many people here. We have a really exciting day planned. But first, I'd like to just take the opportunity to talk about ARPA-H, give an overview of the agency, and then hand it over to Dr. Bon Ku to talk about his new effort, Paradigm, which is really why we're all here today. So ARPA-H is a brand new startup organization in the federal government, which is an extremely special and unique place to be. Our mission is to accelerate better health outcomes for everyone. And there are just a few aspects of this mission statement that I'd like to highlight. First, the accelerate part. This points to the fact that we are interested in funding research in breakthrough technologies. As an agency, we want to make investments that are revolutionary in nature and try to push the envelope on what's truly possible. Second, we are interested in health outcomes, not just things that are working at the bench in the lab. We really want to translate that into technologies, approaches, capabilities that can be applied to people out in the real world. And lastly, the for everyone component of our mission statement. We aren't just interested in making new technologies that don't exist today. Yes, that's great and fantastic if we can do that. But we are also interested in taking things that already might exist and making it so that they can reach a patient population who really needs them. So for example, perhaps there is we want to bring down the costs of a therapy That's too expensive, and we want to make it accessible to anyone that needs it. Or perhaps there's a capability or a technology in an academic medical research center, and we want to make that available to people and patients in, let's say, a home healthcare setting, and be able to distribute that capability to everyone. So we are really looking for healthcare solutions that impact everyone. So ARPA-H was recently started by our current administration in March 2022. And I think that this quote really nicely summarizes what we are trying to do as an agency, and that is pursue ideas that break the mold on how we normally support fundamental research and commercial products into the country. And effectively, what this means is that ARPA-H is interested in funding types of research that are not already supported by other partners, agencies, or funding resources. We are truly looking for the gaps to pursue ideas so audacious that they might just work if we tried. So as an organization, we are unique in that we are an independent agency inside of NIH. We report directly to the Secretary of HHS. As you guys might know, we actually have no internal research labs. We rely on you all as a performer community to execute on the vision that is put forward by the ARPA-H program manager. So as we're standing up our agency, we are building a network of organizations and communities that will both help develop the technologies that we are aiming to create and help test them out in the real world. And then hopefully ultimately supply a path towards long-term use and sustainment. The ARPA-H ecosystem is comprised of our customers, the folks that are our patients, our healthcare providers, the public. Then we have our performer community who are in academia, industry, small and large businesses, and nonprofits. This is the community that is going to conduct the research and build the technologies that we are envisioning. And then we have a variety of other partners that include both private investors, government stakeholders, regulatory partners who can really truly help create a path to transition the technologies that are coming out of ARPA-H into the real world. So we have 4 technical offices at ARPA-H. As Bon said, I am the Deputy Director of the Resilient Systems Office. Our office is specifically interested in making it so that we have a more integrated healthcare system. We are looking at new ways that our healthcare system can be more robust and resilient. And basically that high quality care is easier to access. Our office is interested in making it so that our healthcare system is set up to be able to navigate through and continue to operate effectively during unexpected disruptions, such as a pandemic, cyber attacks, workforce shortages. So our business model is unique in that ARPA organizations are centered around the program manager. Our ideas are generated from the bottom up. And the way that this works is that a program manager who has an amazing, innovative idea comes to ARPA-H and stays with us for about 3 to 6 years. And they will develop and launch a series of programs that last anywhere from 3 to 5 years. And what this does is it effectively allows ARPA-H to do a few things. First, it allows us to be constantly pulling in program managers with new ideas who are at the cutting edge, which allows us to be agile as an organization. It allows us to keep updating our portfolio with new and great concepts by pulling in program managers that have different perspectives. It also allows us to do a series of programs that truly push the envelope in different ways. And as a result, what you can expect to see from ARPA-H as an agency is a steady stream of programs that will each focus on a novel problem that will have a revolutionary impact. So here is how a program is essentially formed at ARPA-H. The program manager develops a novel concept. Internally, they refine that within ARPA-H, and they turn that into a challenge. And that challenge becomes a solicitation for the performer community to respond to. It's up to the program manager in ARPA-H to decide the best chance for success by selecting the performers that have the best plan to provide and carry out the innovative research to address the grand challenge that was envisioned by the program manager. And with that, this is essentially what you will be hearing about today from Dr. Bon Ku about his vision for Paradigm. ARPA-H is very lucky to have Bon as a program manager. He joined ARPA-H in August 2023 from Sidney Kimmel Medical College at Thomas Jefferson University, where he served as an associate dean and also worked as a director of the Health Design Lab. He also currently serves as a practicing emergency physician. Dr. Ku holds a doctorate in medicine from Penn State University and a master's in public policy from Princeton University. And with that, I will hand it over to Dr. Bon Ku to start talking about his program.
Okay, so our instruction manual for our program is our program solicitation. So it's only about like 50 pages. Please read it all because all the truth lies in our program solicitation. We'll still entertain questions and repeat what questions there are, both for the virtual and in-person audience, but that holds a truth to our program. But your time is valuable, and if you're like me, you don't read instruction manuals, that's okay. We're here today to explain all our technical areas clearly, so you know exactly what we are looking for. And your time is valuable. We don't want you to prepare an abstract or a proposal if it's not the right fit for you. So we really want, at the end of today, to encourage you to apply to the correct technical area and discourage you from applying to a technical area that may not suit your team. So why are we building this platform? There's a lot of stats here. I'm going to summarize a few of them. Is those living in rural America are losing their healthcare infrastructure. 100 hospitals have closed in the past decade. A third of the remaining rural hospitals are at risk of closing. And so when a hospital closes in a rural community, they lose their hospital infrastructure. I'm an emergency room doctor, still practice at a hospital. I get to witness the marvels of American medicine, but I'm in an urban hospital. And why I came to ARPA-H is to think about how we can fundamentally redesign our healthcare delivery system. Currently, it's designed so we deliver services in a brick and mortar facility, but how can we flip that and bring those hospital level services outside of the hospital directly into the communities of rural counties? So right now, if you live in rural America, that's a risk factor for dying earlier from almost every major disease. Our agency is about equity. This is inequity across our country. And we want to improve health outcomes in rural counties. There's many ways to do this, but one way is to give them back, give rural Americans back the services that they have lost in a fundamentally new model. One of the primary drivers for worse health outcomes in rural counties is a lack of healthcare access. If a hospital closes down, they fundamentally lose their infrastructure. So it's an epidemic, it's a crisis in our country. We want to change that through this program. There's many of you here assembled in this room and watching online who are leaders in this space. So I'm preaching to an audience that already knows this, but I just want to reemphasize that this is why we're here. We're trying to improve health outcomes in rural America. We are trying to fundamentally redesign how healthcare is delivered. We hope with this program is to develop a Swiss Army knife technology platform that can really act as a force multiplier for existing health systems or providers, and to bring the services from a hospital outside of a hospital to deliver them in a way that is as good as what you expect if you're a patient visiting a hospital. So these advanced medical units are not ambulances. In fact, they are the opposite of ambulances. Ambulances bring patients to centralized facilities to get care. Our goal is to bring those services in a mobile technology platform into communities. There are dozens of use cases. These are just a few of them, just to give you some examples, but we purposely did not prescribe what clinical use cases a performer will propose, because we wanted to open up your creativity. And there may be use cases that we're not thinking of, that we're not envisioning. So we want you to propose those clinical use cases to us that can be used in the Paradigm platform technology. We have some speakers lined up who will give you some examples of potential use cases. I want to emphasize that Paradigm is not a centralized delivery platform. It's the opposite. It's a decentralized or distributed care platform. So all of us who've had a telehealth appointment or gone through one of those drive-through COVID testing sites, you have experienced a form of decentralized care. But why hasn't decentralized care taking off in rural counties? And on the left side of this table shows some of the challenges right now to decentralization care. Telemedicine is a great platform, but you can't get lab tests and interventions done through telemedicine. Currently, there isn't one solution that provides a wide range of services that we expect to get when we go into a brick and mortar hospital. Also, distributed care lacks a software platform that can seamlessly capture patient data in on-a-hospital environments, and no single platform can offer advanced diagnostics. What we hope to do in this program is to deliver care outside of this outdated, antiquated, traditional facility model. And there's three things that we're trying to accomplish in this program. First is to develop a completely new type of distributed care platform that can scale, bring advanced imaging, specifically CT scan technology, into rural communities. As you know, CT scans are an invaluable tool in medicine. We use it to monitor disease, diagnose new diseases. And we also want to develop a technical solution to address workforce shortage. It's a big problem across the US. It's amplified in rural counties. A question that we've been getting through email and our question webpage is, as a performer, can you apply to more than one TA? Yes. Can you apply to 5 TAs? Yes. I highly doubt someone is going to be able to have the expertise to apply to all 5 TAs, but who knows? You may surprise us. So you can apply to as many TAs as you want. My team is here in the front row, so please raise your hands if I say something incorrectly or forget something. So I'm going to give you an overview of the 5 TAs. It's going to be brief. We're going to dive into those this afternoon, and those are hybrid sessions. So for our online audience, you'll be able to attend those as well. The left side of this slide shows our current state. A patient has to travel far distances to get to a centralized facility in order to get care. The hospitals that we work in are designed with high medical staff to patient ratios. And we're trying to develop a better future state on the right side of the slide, so patients won't have to travel long distances to get hospital level care. And we want to design a multifunctional platform that can provide multiple services with less humans. What do we want performers to do? If you're interested in TA1, Technical Area 1, propose a clinical use case or use cases, identify a geography that you want to serve, and rigorously test and evaluate that clinical use case and direct patient care demonstrations. We want you to provide evidence of both clinical effectiveness and also a path towards financial sustainability. We know this is hard. We recognize this. Rural counties have less patients, less volume. The finances don't work. So if your team is interested in applying this technical area and you don't have someone on your team that has experience providing direct healthcare services to rural populations, this TA may not apply to you. Technical area 2. This is an important technical area because it's going to act as an integrator for all the technologies. It's going to integrate all the medical devices that are proposed by the TA1 proposers and integrate them in a single vehicle platform. Our goal is to build the next generation of mobile health unit vehicles that are capable of delivering hospital level services. We get asked a lot why EV platform and not ICE, internal combustible engines. By the time this program ends in 2030, about 40% of vehicles sold to the public would be on an electric vehicle platform. So performers are not only going to have to build the vehicle platform, but also act as an integrator for all of the other technical area performers. So for example, if the TA1 performer decides they want to provide maternal health services in a rural county, they will supply you with a list of their device needs, their equipment and supply needs, and you will supply them with a unit that is specifically designed for that clinical use case. And also if it breaks down, you will fix it because we don't want there to be a disruption in those clinical services. So your team should have some experience in building or outfitting vehicles. In this technical area 3, is for device integration. We're going to have all these medical devices, but medical devices, as you know, aren't designed for data integration. And the challenge here is that the data generated from medical devices from different vendors come in different formats, from Fire HL7 to other older formats. But we want to make it easy for any health system provider who's providing clinical services in this mobile platform to be able to offer clinical services to their patients and to get that data and link it to the EHR system that they're using. So the goal is to build a plug-and-play software architecture for medical devices and really to make it as easy as buying a new printer, connecting it to your home Wi-Fi system and linking it to your existing computer. So if you're applying to this technical area, you're going to have to develop a user-friendly software platform that accepts data from multiple different vendors and communicates that data to the existing EHR of the provider who's operating the Paradigm platform. In TA4, we want to take this big CT scan that currently operates in a hospital room and to make it portable. There's 80 million CT scans that are performed in the US each year, but many Americans live in imaging deserts. CT scans are an invaluable tool in medicine. So there's some enabling technologies out there like carbon nanotubes for pulsing X-ray sources. There's advanced AI imaging algorithms that may help miniaturizing CT scanners. So we're not saying that you have to use these enabling technologies, but this may give you some sense of what we're looking for. And we may be surprised that there's maybe other technologies that we're not aware of that can really remove that rotating gantry and to be able to miniaturize it so it fits into a mobile health unit platform. Finally, TA5. We're an unusual program. We have 5 technical areas, so I feel like our program has something for everyone. In this technical area, we're going to augment the skills of existing clinical workers. So our goal is not to put physicians and nurses necessarily on these units. But what we want to do is to be able to have healthcare workers perform faster, perform safer, to turn a generalist into a just-in-time specialist. There's enabling technologies like artificial intelligence, machine learning, intelligent tutoring systems. that you can use. There's existing hardware like AR, VR, motion sensors that you may want to couple with those technologies. But at the end of the program, we want to make it easier for a healthcare worker who's delivering services in this platform to be able to do it with a real-time guidance system. All right, almost done here. How am I doing on time? We got 5 minutes. Okay, great. At the end of this 5-year program, we'll have deployed a dozen multifunctional care delivery platforms across different regions of rural America. Our clinical providers will have evaluated dozens of clinical applications, and the goal is to provide real-world evidence of the capabilities of this platform. And the more clinical applications we test, the more we can de-risk this platform for future transition. On the right side, you see some other deliverables that we want to address in this program. We'll be able to dive into these in our afternoon sessions. So we're inviting performers to apply into any one of these technical areas. This slide highlights that there's going to be continuous feedback between all of the performers. The branch points show areas of a key integration between the performers. There's also going to be down selects as well in this program. We talk about those down selects in the program solicitation. Why is ARPA-H doing this? This is a future state that we're envisioning because it's a right time to do it. We're experiencing a fundamental shift in healthcare. There's an increasing demand for distributed or decentralized care that was accelerated by the pandemic. I got to witness this firsthand working in an emergency room during the pandemic, that we could not have patients come into our hospitals. We had to think creatively of new ways of how to test patients, how to vaccinate patients outside of a brick and mortar facility. We also have a crisis of shortage of clinicians and nurses that's leading to healthcare deserts in rural counties. And these widespread closures are disproportionately impacting minority and Native American populations. All right, so next steps. If you're interested in this program, submit an abstract. This is not mandatory, but highly encouraged. Here's your opportunity to get feedback. Once these abstracts come in, our team is going to get some espressos lined up and go over each and every one of them and give you feedback. It will also be a time that some of our feedback may be like, this is great. We invite you to submit a full proposal. It may be, don't submit a full proposal. And that may be hard to receive that feedback, but it's going to save you time. Everyone is busy here. We want to save people time. We want to make sure you are your proposal is a right fit for this program. The proposals are due on April 26th. Question that we get, do you have to submit an abstract in order to submit a proposal? No, but why would you ever do that? You're going to get free feedback quickly. Submit an abstract if you're thinking about submitting a proposal. It would only help your application. In our afternoon sessions, we're going to address specific metrics and milestones. We're going to bring some of the rest of the team up for those sessions. And I am going to kick it off to Adria Robinson. She is our agreements officer. Probably most of your questions are going to be for her. She has a lot of answers. And welcome, Adria, to the stage.
We actually have a couple of questions.
Oh, we have a couple of questions. Okay, great.
If one question is, can you clarify, a group can apply to multiple TAs if they have proposals that fit individual technical areas?
And yes, the question is, can a group apply to multiple TAs if their technical team has expertise in multiple areas. So you can submit a proposal to multiple TAs separately. So if the question is one proposal cannot include multiple TAs, you have to have, for example, if you're submitting to 3 technical areas, those are 3 separate proposals. Sorry for the paperwork, but it makes it fair for everyone who is applying. Any more questions, Adria?
Developing a wearable and fully autonomous ultrasound imaging platform for use outside of clinical settings, particularly in rural areas, addresses which task?
All right, so the question is developing an autonomous ultrasound for use in rural areas applies to which technical area? I think I would have to know a little bit more about that. If you are, if there's an intelligent task guidance component to it, then that would be to the intelligence task guidance system. If you are delivering services, clinical services that require an ultrasound like that, you have developed a technology, then that's a TA1 if you're providing that direct clinical care. We are not going to be developing necessarily new types of medical devices that need FDA approval outside of the miniaturized CT scan. Thanks for those questions. Keep on sending us these questions because it really helps us get the message across clearer. Oh, I love this question. So if the goals of this program is to sustain and keep rural provider doors open, should we be concerned that larger metropolitan health systems will use this mobile platform to take income away from rural health centers, clinics, and hospitals? That is a risk of the program that we have heard. That is the opposite of our goal. Our goal is to sustain existing rural healthcare providers. So for example, so in TA1, we asked for a financial sustainability plan that we will review in addition to the clinical effectiveness plan. So there needs to be stronger proposals will demonstrate how your clinical service is going to support existing local healthcare system infrastructure. So we don't want an urban medical center monopolizing rural healthcare services and closing down those who are already providing services in those areas. We want to do the opposite. We want to support existing local healthcare system infrastructure, and stronger proposals will speak to that. Great. All right, welcome Adria to the stage.
I'm Adria Robinson. I am the Agreements Officer supporting BON and the Paradigm Program. We are using a program solicitation throughout ARPA-H's life cycle. You're going to see us utilize multiple different types of solicitations for our research and development programs. So here we are using a program solicitation. The draft has been posted to SAM. It's been up for about a month now, and we are working on getting the final solicitation posted in the coming weeks. All of the awards for Paradigm will be other transactions. We'll talk about those in more detail in just a moment. We estimate if proposals are due on April 26th, we estimate that we'll finish evaluation by May 28th, in which case, if you are selected for an award, me and my team will be reaching out to you at that point to begin negotiations. Funding for the program. So as Bon said, this is a 5-year program. We are planning on funding between 18 and 24 months at award, and additional funding will come throughout the rest of the program. Other transactions. So if you've done business with the government before, you're probably used to contracts, which fall under the federal acquisition regulation. If you've received grants or cooperative agreements from the government before, you're probably used to the rules and regulations that apply to those instruments. Other transactions fall outside of all of those regulations. They are not bound by the FAR. They are not bound by any of the grant or cooperative agreement regulations. They allow for us to be a lot more flexible. They allow for us to be able to negotiate terms and conditions with performers so that we come to an agreement that's mutually beneficial. You'll find that other transactions are going to allow you to operate more closely to the way you operate in the commercial space rather than being hindered by all of the really rigid government contracting rules and regulations. So you'll see that ARPA-H is going to be using other transactions quite a bit throughout our projects and programs because it just allows for that additional flexibility. The process. As Bond stated, abstract submission is optional. Abstracts are due on February 27th. They should not exceed 3 pages. We are asking for a ROM. We do not expect that number to be final. We anticipate it will change between your abstract and proposal submission, but we are trying to get an idea of, the area range of prices when you submit your abstracts. Make sure you utilize the abstract template that's been posted on SAM. It's the best way to ensure you don't miss anything when putting together your abstract. We are reviewing abstracts. We are not evaluating abstracts. What that means is there's no evaluation criteria that applies to the abstracts. We are simply reviewing. You'll receive feedback. You'll receive a statement that we either encourage you to submit a proposal or we are discouraging you from submitting a proposal. Regardless of the feedback, you may submit a proposal. That is 100% a business decision that you all can make, even if we discourage a proposal submission. If you look at the special notice that's been posted on SAM, we are telling you to submit your abstracts through a site called ECPS. We are actually changing that. We are going to be submitting through solutions.arpah.gov. I would encourage you to please wait until next week before you submit an abstract. We are working out some final details with that site. I will be posting a notice on SAM telling you, okay, now this site is ready. You can submit your abstracts. Please do not submit your abstracts to ECPS. Wait and submit to the new site once I post the update. Full proposals will still be submitted in ECPS. So if you've used that site before, it should be familiar to you. Proposals will be no more than 40 pages, and that excludes your technical description document, which is essentially, if you're used to government contracts, your SAL for an OT. The proposals will be evaluated against the evaluation criteria listed in the solicitation. All of the proposals will be evaluated against all 4 evaluation criteria, and selection decisions will be made based on those evaluations as we've outlined in the solicitation. Here's the first 3 evaluation criteria. I'm not going to read them to you. These are the same as what's outlined in the solicitation. These are how we will be evaluating your proposals. The evaluation criteria is listed in decreasing order of importance. The last evaluation criterion is the cost reasonableness realism. We're going to be doing value analyses of your proposals. We'll take into account intellectual property as you've proposed, any intellectual property rights that you've proposed as well. All right, you've already seen this slide. I'm not going to go through it all again, but I will say, please read all of the words in the program solicitation. When we post the final solicitation, read all of the words. There will be changes from the draft. Any proposals that do not conform with the requirements will not be evaluated. So please make sure you take the time to read so that your, earth-shattering idea doesn't get thrown out for not following directions. Are there any questions for me before I introduce our next speaker? Abstracts and proposals, none of that is public. Because you all will be including proprietary information. We will not be sharing any of your information with anyone outside of the evaluation and review teams. Wait until once the deadline the question is, are they reviewed on a rolling basis? So once the deadline has passed for submission, everything is reviewed at one time. The question is, are we giving any preference for small businesses, essentially? And the answer is no. Every proposal that comes in is going to be evaluated equally, regardless of who submits it. If you're a 500-person corporation, if you're a one-man shop, it doesn't matter. All the proposals will be evaluated equally. All right, so you do not have to be a US-based company to submit. In ARPA-H's statute, we are required to give preference to ideas and solutions that are going to directly benefit the US taxpayer. And Megan, please step in if I misspeak on any of this. But you do not have to be a US-based company to participate, either as a prime or a sub. 2 to 3, the question is, what's the turnaround time for abstract feedback? And that's 2 to 3 weeks. Correct, there's no socioeconomic preference for this solicitation.
If the proposal includes hardware, for example, a miniaturized CT scanner, should we be trying to make our proposal achieve the 12 systems that Dr. Koo mentioned to deploy 12 integrated care delivery systems?
We'll hold that question for this afternoon, and we'll answer it in the TA sessions.
Hi, do you allow parallel submission to other ARPA-H programs for the same proposal?
We can't. Short answer is no, because sorry, the question is, do we allow parallel submissions to other ARPA-H programs with the same proposal? What we want to do is make sure we're not utilizing government resources reviewing the same proposal twice. So we encourage you to make sure you're submitting to wherever your proposal is the best fit.
Hi, for TA5, is there any consideration applied to subclinical medical workforce in terms of the intelligent task guidance, utilization of things like community health workers, doulas, care coordinators?
So we'll hold that question for the TA5 session this afternoon. Any questions that are specific to a TA, please hold till this afternoon. 1 second, if you could in the mic.
Could you clarify the FDA approval? I thought I heard you say don't want anything that requires FDA approval, but a lot of these medtech solutions might not exist today. Like wouldn't that need FDA approval?
All right, we'll hold that until this afternoon.
That's kind of broad.
Right,
Yeah,
so
like the CT scan doesn't exist today, the miniaturized version. Is it so? Oh, sorry. Okay.
Yeah, so the question is about FDA approval and clarifying, I guess Bon's comment earlier about not needing or not wanting to, not submitting things that require FDA approval. Am I understanding the question correctly? So we'll hold that question until this afternoon. Right.
Nice.
Yeah, I am not a technical person. I'm the person signing your contract. So please don't ask me technical questions.
Or the submission to different categories will be reviewed separately.
I'm not sure I understand the question. Sorry.
If you submit something to TA1 and submit something to TA2, are the same people reviewing the same, both?
For the most part, yes. We might have some subject matter experts reviewing different pieces of what's submitted, but for the most part, you're going to have one evaluation team. And this will be the final question.
You had something about a limit of submissions per TA from a single institution. Is that the same for very large institutions, academic medical centers where independent people may be pursuing?
So the question is about the limit on submissions per TA and whether that applies to everyone. Everything in the solicitation applies to all proposers. equally. Unless we specify this doesn't apply to this segment or that group, everything applies across the board. It is now my pleasure to introduce Dr. Megan Frisk, the Director for International Affairs at ARPA-H. She comes to ARPA-H from the U.S. Department of State, where she was Senior Advisor in the Office of the Special Envoy for Critical and Emerging Technology. And prior to that, a member of the Secretary's Policy Planning staff. And she's just amazing. So listen to everything she says because she's just wonderful. Megan Frisk.
Are we still in the morning? Good morning, everybody. It's such a pleasure to be here. Thank you, Dr. Koo and your team for having me here today. I think a lot of people might wonder why the international affairs person is here at a Proposers Day. So I'm really excited to share a little bit more about how we at ARPA-H are thinking about international cooperation and collaboration as really what can be an essential component of driving our programs forward towards success, and also learning from our international partners to inform the design and trajectory of programs. So more specifically, though, I'm here because Paradigm really can lend itself to global solutions. Paradigm is seeking to address challenges in the United States in terms of rural healthcare, but the solutions developed for the US can apply around the world. They can truly impact other communities that are also seeking to improve their healthcare and health outcomes. Furthermore, Paradigm performers will seek inputs both domestic and international, again, to design the research and the direction of the research. So I'm really thrilled to be here today to support the international reach of this program, to meet you all and get to know you today. You've seen this slide already, but coming back to it, I've seen other people trickle into the room. So we'll just remind everybody that our mission is to accelerate better health outcomes for everyone. And by everyone, Adria did answer this question. We do want to design healthcare solutions to benefit US taxpayers, to benefit Americans, but we also do want to accelerate better health outcomes around the world. So our Division of International Affairs was launched very recently, just this past fall, to do exactly that. It's to recognize that ARPA-H can have an impact on health outcomes for everyone, domestic and international. So my division really manages those international relationships, those partnerships, those collaboration opportunities that will advance the agency's mission and drive innovation. So we are actively looking for international stakeholders in our programs, potential partners, research opportunities that align with the agency's mission and will enhance the impact of ARPA-H funded initiatives. So the imperative for international, I think, we see ourselves as a catalyst in the ecosystem, the global ecosystem. We are not the only member, but we are a catalyst. So we do need to work together with a broad group of stakeholders, both government, non-government, industry, academia, domestic and international. So I get the question all the time, do we fund international partners? Do we work with international partners? Can international entities apply for ARPA-H funding? And the answer is yes. So again, while ARPA-H programs do focus on solutions to the hardest problems faced in America, health problems we face in the United States are felt around the world, and ideas can come from anywhere in the world. So we're looking for the most brilliant solutions, the brilliant minds, the best capabilities to contribute to our research. So the types of performers on this research, and this is just to give a sense of the different types of reasons why one might seek international research cooperation. Really, how are we bringing together the best talent, the best minds, the best capabilities, facilities, knowledge, technologies, you name it, how are we bringing those together to address these health challenges? And we're really looking across the spectrum. I think the first thing that people would imagine is, well, how can I perform on this research? What can an international entity do on the performance side? But it's really quite a spectrum from the research itself all the way through to transition. So I've just listed kind of the two ends of the research here, but we're looking for partners, domestic and international, that can enable the research and development. Do you have that unique capability, that laboratory, that facility, that research infrastructure, large research infrastructure that can contribute to the R&D itself? Do you have that ability to pilot or to scale or field test an invention in this country or another country? And is there an enabling research or policy environment that would allow the research to move forward? On the transition side, you've heard us say many times, live in the real world or live in the wild. These technologies need to get out there to really serve patients and serve people, keep them from becoming patients too. So we want to work with international partners to also understand the customer base around the world, the investors around the world, who is going to pick up these technologies that we can't fund in perpetuity, who's going to take these and transition them into the real world. We need to understand foreign markets and regulatory and policy landscapes. And also many of our programs might end in clinical trials. Where are there opportunities around the world for that? Collaboration can take many forms. Again, I mentioned that a performer or a teaming with international entities is usually where people's minds typically go in terms of international cooperation, but there's many other opportunities that I'd be happy to talk to you about during the various breaks and sessions today, but also opportunities to be a transition partner, identify that transition pathway, and also to find co-investors and in-kind relationships that will advance the research. But one I wanted to spend just a minute on was related to an international spoke. So we launched ARPA-H, the ARPA-Net Health Network here that connects the health ecosystem and is powering communities, domestic and international, soon to be. So this network, and a colleague from our patio office will be speaking after the break. So the patio office is the one that is really leading this effort for ARPA-H. But I do want to preview what this network will do and how international can fit in here. So while we have these hubs in Dallas and in Boston, or the Dallas region and greater Boston region, and these spokes all over the country and eventually the world that allow us to connect with communities and investors in ARPA-H funded research and accelerate how these innovations reach the market and ultimately the end user. And you can see here the types of different spokes, and we have 400 plus spokes right now, the types of different spokes that we have that will kind of enable all aspects of our research and how we're going to reach those customers and how we're going to reach those investors. We have 400 spokes that are vast majority in the United States. I believe we might have one outside the United States right now, but we are looking for and want to build out in 2024, those other spokes that are connected to the ARPA-H network. So this is just for everybody's awareness that we would love to include more from around the world to do as we, as I've stated, which is to reach those customers and investors anywhere. So just to wrap with some FAQs here, and we will be putting these up on our website. And the first question is, does ARPA-H fund international R&D? And yes, the answer is yes, unequivocally. Our world is interconnected. The challenging problems we face in health in the US, we face elsewhere. And while, as Adrian mentioned, we prioritize awards to entities that will conduct the work in the United States, and it must benefit the US taxpayer, the work and trials, it is not a requirement that they have to be in the United States. Oops. Sorry about that. Can ARPA-H directly fund a foreign entity? And that answer is also yes. Each of our innovative solutions openings, formerly BAA, defines the eligibility for a non-US person. But is every non-US person or entity eligible? And the answer is no. we take them on a case-by-case basis, as non-U.S. entities must comply with necessary non-disclosure agreements, security regulations, export controls, and other relevant governing statutes. We also will not award to entities organized under the laws of a covered foreign country, which is defined in our National Security Act as Russia, Iran, North Korea, and China, or entities suspended or debarred from business with the U.S. government. And there are various lists that will provide that information on who is not eligible. And so, again, I'd love to speak with all of you over the course of today, and happy to answer any questions. But you've seen this slide. Sign up for our newsletter. This is a way to keep on top of what is coming down the pike at ARPA-H. Submit your project idea. I don't have a QR code up here right now, as we will be closing our open BAA in March, and we will have more mission office specific calls that will replace that. So just hold on that for another couple weeks till a new QR code is available to you. And then also collaborate with us. We have a general inbox of international and ARPA-H, and any of our team would be happy to talk to you about your questions around international collaboration. I think that I have one minute, 2 minutes. I'm happy to take questions, but also talk to you about your specific questions at the break as well, because I am the one who is fortunate to send you all to a short break right now. Yes. So the question was, can we work with World Bank or others to help finance these projects? Yep. So there is opportunities to work with other funders. That's a different category. Working with other types of funding organizations to be able to co-invest, to be able to divide and conquer, to coordinate and deconflict. Our relationship with other funders will be a little bit different than our relationship with performers. So there are opportunities to do that, just like every other U.S. government entity, and how we work with other funding bodies. Yes.
So just to clarify, is this part of Paradigm or you're a separate thing?
No. Well, it's part of ARPA-H. So we are a division in ARPA-H to support international cooperation for the entire agency and every program that has needs and has the potential for global reach and impact. I'm here for Paradigm because it very specifically has this ability to impact rural communities and rural care elsewhere in the world. And indeed, so many countries have tried these types of approaches, and learning from what has worked and what hasn't worked around the world can be very informative to the design and approach to this particular problem.
So does that imply you will be part of the review process of a proposal, or you're on a separate path?
Yeah, I'm not part of the review process. Okay. I would manage the relationships and building out kind of the network for our international cooperation. There's one in the back.
Hi, are you going to be looking for other governments, so other national governments, to provide funding, or is this purely going to come from ARPA-H in the US? So say, for another example, the UK or Australia were to bring matching funds, how will that be perceived?
Yeah, that's a very good question. So again, our relationship then with other governments is going to be different than how we're funding performers. One of the ways, there's several different ways we can work with other governments, and we are so new, we have not yet even gotten to that point. But essentially, there are many ways to do joint calls, or to each pay your own way, or to, especially in this, the in-kind relationship is always an opportunity for working with another government's labs or facilities. So absolutely, our government to government relationships are really important. I think especially for also, I mentioned deconflicting. We have finite resources. We're all tackling similar problems. How are we coordinating around the way we go about these problems? And so, yes, we talk to our government counterparts very regularly on those fronts as well. Very good question. And I am so sorry. I've been given the watch symbol, but I will find you right here at the break. Thank you all so much.
All right, we're going to start up both in person and virtually. All right, a question we've been getting is, are the slides and recording going to be published online? Yes. So we will post those on the website after this. Our next speaker is going to be Melissa Antman. She is joining us virtually. Melissa is the Deputy Director of PADIO, which is the Project Accelerator Transition Innovation Office at ARPA-H. What Melissa is doing is building capabilities in PADIO to provide resources and services to ensure that ARPA-H breakthroughs translate into solutions that are scalable. Before joining ARPA-H, Melissa had many roles, including being in the immediate office of the director at the NIH and the Center for Research Strategy at the National Cancer Institute. I'm going to hand it over to you, Melissa.
So great. Thanks, Bon. It is really a pleasure to be here virtually, to both introduce PADIO and to also support the Paradigm program. Bon is a great friend of PADIO. And one thing I wanted to say is how he views the world, and that's something you can also see within the goals of Paradigm, is really something that we seek to incorporate. As Bon mentioned, PADIO, or the Project Accelerator Transition Innovation Office, is a technical office at ARPA-H, and we provide capabilities and R&D that support transition. Next slide, please. So first, I want to start off with what I mean by transition. So transition to me means really taking a product or capabilities or solutions and get it sustainably into the hands of all people. So this is what really helps us meet our ARPA-H mission, which is to accelerate health outcomes for all Americans and all people. This sort of office or transition, this type of transition is unique really for an ARPA. And partly it's because our transition partner and our customers are complex. So we have 300+ million Americans, but also we made transition to communities, to hospitals, to clinicians and caregivers, to investors, and a number of other entities. And we also have to overcome some barriers to transition in the health space, including such things as regulatory and reimbursement that we have to navigate. So our goal in PADIO is to really identify barriers and to provide transition support and commercialization services to both the program managers and their performers, to really make sure that we increase the probability that all of the capabilities funded by ARPA-H reach everyone. And I want to make sure I mention that ARPA-H is not funding performers in perpetuity. So as was mentioned before, this particular program is 5 years. So we want to make sure that we're planning for this transition early on to ensure that our investments in ARPA-H programs really translate into the breakthroughs that are sustainable and survive in the wild. Next slide, please. So this slide really indicates where the solution might go after ARPA-H. There are a number of common pathways that might be our pathways to transition. I also encourage you to think about, for your particular technology that you may be submitting to Paradigm, to encourage you to think about where you think your technology could go after ARPA-H funding. So in particular, there's some common pathways that are usually through a traditional business model, but we also have partners that could be to a healthcare system, even especially like government or a private healthcare system. We could transition directly to another government agency or to get follow-on funding from another government agency. And in particular, I also want to make sure that the last pathway is something we focus on. So we're a really bold, kind of high-risk agency. So some of our programs might fail, some of our projects might fail. So we want to be able to provide those sort of early off-ramps and also be able to incorporate lessons learned from those programs. Next slide, please. So I just wanted to point out here, really thinking about designing with the end in mind and understanding the pathways and what our market is and who our end users are for particular programs. So here in particular, I wanted to point out that one of the most common startup failures is that there is no market need for that startup's capability. So this is something we want to avoid, these sorts of failures, when the science and technology are very solid. Next slide, please. So we've taken a human-centered design approach within Patio, and in particular using this design rubric of DVF, or desirability, viability, and feasibility. And in this case, the feasibility or the science and technology of a program is really the purview of the PMs. But Patio's focus in working with PMs is the desirability and the viability components. So what we mean by desirability is really focusing on the people and making sure that people in this country enthusiastically adopt the capabilities that we're developing within ARPA-H. And then the viability is really about the market and business. So we want to make sure that the market will enthusiastically adopt and can sustain the capabilities that are developed through programs. Next slide, please. So we want, as I mentioned before, we want to increase the probability at each step of the way in the program lifecycle that we can get our capabilities can really drive positive health outcomes and can survive in the wild or sustainable in the real world. So we can't think about transition only at the end of the program. And so we've been working with Bon and his team and other program managers, starting with the design of their programs. And we will continue to work with Bon's team as the program matures and the capabilities and projects evolve in his program. As Bon and his team actively manage this program, we will also work as needed with the awardees, with the performers on the programs, to provide capabilities to those performers as well to ensure that their projects can transition. Next slide, please. So we have 3 divisions or sets of capabilities in Patio. We have a Technology Transfer and Transition Services Division, or T3X. And this is really to build transition-ready programs through de-risking solutions from, again, in every step of the project, from program design through performance. I'll also mention here that we do run the agency SBIR program. I know that was a question earlier if there was any special review for small businesses. I just wanted to mention that we do have a completely separate solicitation for our SBIR programs at ARPA-H. Our second division here is the Health Ecosystem and Engagement Team, or HEAT. The goal of this team is really to create meaningful bidirectional communication between ARPA-H and All America. And finally, I'll end our discussion with ARPANET-H, which the goal of that new network is to really connect a fragmented health ecosystem through a number of different projects, events, and democratize learning. Next slide, please. So first, I'll dig a little deeper into the T3X group. We have a number of capabilities here that we provide to PMs and performers. So first is this Experts in Residence program. And this is really executive level expertise that provides advice and support to really ensure the viability of our programs. We provide this service in a bespoke manner. We can pull these experts in and off as needed for a particular program and for the particular details of a program. And these experts can really help identify blind spots and barriers and solve for them as we work with PMs throughout their program. The types of expertise that we can also provide include support for regulatory and reimbursement, Again, to start thinking about that early so we avoid traps later in the process. And we also can conduct a number of different types of analyses and modeling. So landscape analyses, commercial analyses, and IP analyses, as well as economic modeling. And as I mentioned, using these resources, we can also provide support to performers. So if you do become an awardee on this program, you may have access to these resources as well. Next slide, please. Next is the HEAT team. So the goal of this team is to really help with the desirability so people can enthusiastically adopt our capabilities. And so we seek to generate here meaningful, bidirectional, and continuous communication and engagement across America. This team has capabilities that provide resources and expertise on the greater health ecosystem, and they provide sort of a network on demand, which is a service for ARPA-H PMs and others at ARPA-H to connect the right people at the right time to help PMs and programs, and also for us to ensure that we're not duplicating efforts of other institutes or agencies. We also have design tools as a capability on this team, and the goal there is to really help capture the needs and perspectives of the beneficiaries of our programs and to make sure that we can build them into our program designs. Next slide, please. And this is my last slide. I'll finish with ARPA-H, and Megan had a bit of an introduction here. So this was just launched in the fall. And it's really the ARPA-H network really helps with our goal of meeting people where they are. And it can help us continue to ensure that the solutions that we fund are desirable and viable for the nation. As Megan mentioned, we have 2 hubs within this network in Patio. So one is the Investor Catalyst Hub in the Boston area. The other is the CX Hub in Dallas. And I think many of you may already have been involved with the CX Hub here. I think we've had some connections with the Paradigm program already. And overall, this comprises a nationwide network of spokes. And as Megan mentioned, now we're at about 450 spokes across the nation. They have locations in all 50 states right now. And these spokes comprise a huge range of entities. So they range from patient groups, hospital systems, community organizations, academic institutions and medical centers, and then investors, venture capital, and small and large businesses. We have a number of capabilities through ARPA-H. One of them in particular is funding opportunities and R&D projects that are the goal of these projects that we would fund within ARPA-H are to accelerate transition. And you could see how components of a program manager's program, such as this one, could have projects that could be run through ARPA-H. We also have what we had been calling network activations. They're really network surveys. And these are really to be able to gather feedback at scale and very flexibly and quickly from the network. And this also can enable an opportunity to help shape different initiatives at ARPA-H. The network will hold these network building activities and consortium events, and these really foster connections and share learnings across the network. And finally, in the future, we hope to, as programs mature, all of these programs are new at ARPA-H since it's a pretty new agency, but we hope to provide capabilities that could include things like user testing, prototyping, clinical trial support, and advanced manufacturing. And as I promised, I think this was my last slide. So happy, I don't know if I have any time, but happy to take questions now or offline as needed. But thank you.
All right. Thanks, Melissa. We are sadly out of time. We got to jump to our next speaker, Chris Lunt. And really happy to introduce him. Chris is the Chief Technology Officer for the All of Us research program at the NIH. There he builds platforms that engage participants and enables researchers. So Fun fact about Chris, he's a lifelong learner who hosts a science book club. I want to join that.
Fun. I want to talk a little bit about all of us to give you a sense of what our program is doing and how it may intersect with this. And so the first thing is to understand that the All of Us program was put together specifically to drive precision medicine, to try and advance precision medicine with the broader research community. And so we're going out to collect data for 1 million people who are living in the US, collecting data from a variety of different aspects of their lives, de-identifying it, putting it out there for the research community to be able to use to advance precision medicine. And this is something that we have been doing now for about 7 years, and we have a good presence around the country, as you can see from this map. And we have a large number of consortium partners that we're working with to make all of this happen, including both technical partners as well as partners like academic medical centers that are helping us with recruitment, and a lot of groups that we're working with to reach out to the broader community, because an important part of this program is to reach people who have been underrepresented in biomedical research traditionally. And we are getting closer to our goal. We have about 762,000 people who are registered in the program with electronic health records for we're getting close to 500,000. And more than half the people have completed all the initial steps of the program, which includes biosampling and some basic surveys. As I mentioned earlier, we are focused on reaching people who have been underrepresented traditionally for any reason: sexual and gender minority status, disability status, rural, but also looking specifically at people who are underrepresented by virtue of their race and ethnicity. So our goal is to get to 80% of the participants to be underrepresented for some reason, and at least half of the people to be underrepresented by virtue of their race or ethnicity. Along the way, then, we are collecting from them both participant surveys, and there's a variety of different surveys that we do, and there's 3 basic ones they have to do to start, which includes personal health habits and family health history, as well as demographics. We are collecting electronic health records and normalizing all of those for the researchers. We are collecting some physical measures at the time that people enroll in the program. And then we're also getting people to connect their wearable devices to the program, and in some cases distributing wearable devices as well. We are then running a whole genome sequence on each one of the participants and extracting things like structural variants from that as well, and planning to expand the omics that we're doing in time. We have over 9,000 researchers now accessing the data, with over 680 institutions having signed the data use agreement to have that access, including we just launched in November for international access for this data as well. And we have 31 institutions internationally now working on it. The data was first made available in 2020, and we now have over 330 publications that are using the data. And another thing that we're trying to do is to make sure that we're doing good return of value back to people who are participating in this program, to encourage them to stay with the program longitudinally. So we are returning genomic information to people who participate in the program, which has been a very challenging prospect and a lot of work with the FDA to allow us to do this. But we are returning both ancestry and traits to people, which is mostly just for fun. But importantly, we are also returning the ACMG 59 variants. So these are variants with high penetrance, well understood to have addressable health consequences. If we find somebody who has one of these variants, we both do a CLIA certified version of their genome again, and then put them in touch with a genomic counselor if and only if they want to be told if something is found. We're also providing pharmacogenomic information. And so we're returning back to people if they have variants of genes that may change their metabolism of commonly used drugs. And this is something we're now working to help physicians to be able to integrate into the health experience. Having made it this far, we are now starting to look at expanding what our program is doing in partnership with others. We have a little bit of history with doing ancillary programs within the NIH. Importantly, right now, we are working on the Nutrition for Precision Health program. This is a program to collect metabolomic and other information from a subset of the population that can be added into the data set made available to researchers. But we have also done some work previously with NCI, and we are starting work potentially with the National National Institute of Environmental Health Sciences, or NIEHS, to start to be able to also collect information about people's pollution exposures as well as other issues. This year, we are hoping to start engagement with the industry as well to work with commercial partners who are interested in co-investing with us on the collection of new data types with this population. So what does this have to do with Paradigm? We have a mobile platform. We currently have 3 units that are deployed around the country to help us with the recruitment process for our program. These mobile platforms come in 3 different sizes that enable us to work well in different kinds of rural conditions. And those are currently deployed centrally on the West Coast and the East Coast. You can see this is our 2024 plan for where those units are going to be going. And these units go specifically to recruit. We engage locally with community partners to help build interest before the unit is going to arrive. We specifically target rural areas that have made it difficult for people to participate in research in the past. We have had pretty good experience with this so far. Over 5,000 accounts created, over 3,000 people for whom we have collected biosamples. And it has proven to be a good way for us from a expense perspective to engage with underrepresented populations and being part of the research process. The challenge in doing this, in part, is building trust and credibility with underrepresented audiences. The history of the federal government's relationship with a variety of communities in the U.S. has not always been well received. And so it has taken time to build a relationship through trusted community partners. And then we find that by staying in the market for a period of time, doing messaging within that market, and engaging also with local media, local elected officials, and others can help bring attention to and bring people out to come engage in the program. And so I think there's an opportunity for us here to work with the people who are proposing for the Paradigm Award for us to be a part of your solution. I'm going to give some examples of that. But in general, what I want to promote is the idea that we already do have some units that are out there in the field, that we have existing routes and national infrastructure to support bringing people to these mobile units. And we have extensive relationships with communities, and particularly with underrepresented communities. And we are delivering actionable health results to participants. So people who do participate in our program ultimately do receive genomic information back, which is something that particularly in rural populations has broadly not been available so far. And we do have some biosample collection infrastructure, and we do biobanking for both blood and saliva and urine. There's an opportunity here to experiment with new biosample types. So if there are people here who are looking to develop some new biosampling, some new kinds of diagnostics or things, we might be interested to partner with you as an expansion of the work that we're already doing in the program. And we have a researcher community actively looking at the data that is collected, helping to develop biomarkers, helping to develop diagnostics and therapeutics from that. And there's also possibility on the All of Us funding opportunity roadmap. There's a QR code you can see here. We are doing some small funding of work that's going on in terms of advancing the science here. And we do have some amount of public relations. We have some broad outreach and obviously good relationships with the rest of the NIH. And here's a chance to contribute to what I think was a really important effort for our country to advance precision medicine, to treat not the average of a population, but treat the actual individual that's there with you. And so some specific ideas that I just want to very quickly go through include deploying and testing novel diagnostics. It's possible that by joining together with us, if there are diagnostics, for example, on the technical aim area 4 for the CT scanner, that we could look to do a relationship where we do CT scanning for some portion of our population and work with you to do that. There's also the idea of building next generation mobile units and letting us be a part of that experience with you. There's the chance where we're interested in developing units that could address specific scientific areas that we're trying to advance, like cardiovascular health or disability community mobile health units. So if you are developing units and want to address a specific set of aims, we could be a part of that with you. And also to be part of study partnerships. So I think if you are advancing a specific study that you want to do, we may be able to help you. So for example, if you're looking at collecting exposure data everywhere you go, that we could be a part of that as well. And also a way to engage your audience in research. And this is, I think, one of the challenges our program has repeatedly faced is as people are working on advancing healthcare, they don't think of research as being an important part of that process. It's often afterthought. It's often not well designed into things like consents. And we'd like you to think about research as being part of what you do because it's what advances the whole experience. And we're working to try and make research something that's really available to everybody who's not been a part of research in the past and make sure that we're really serving all the communities in the US equally. And with that, that might be my last slide. And the clicker's not going forward. So how much, yeah, there we go. And so if you have questions, we do have an email address set up that you can send those questions to. Just as a reminder, we're not ARPA-H, we're not specifically Paradigm. Questions you have a Paradigm should go to the Paradigm team, but we would like to be potentially part of what you're doing. And how much time do I have left? 3 minutes, great. So just no time for some questions. I have one right here. Actually, sorry, could you get the microphone? Because it's hard to hear up here.
You're the first person that actually talked about the most important ingredient and element that we have in healthcare, which is in rural health, is to instill trust, to use trust. And we deal with African-American population, Latino American, Native American, and very often very poor white populations in rural areas. If we don't develop trust first, if we can't establish that, we can't do anything else. So I appreciate you that. But the real question I've got to ask for you mentioned data collected from EHRs. How much do you trust the electronic healthcare records data? And I'll tell you why. I'll ask that after you answer that.
Sure. And so the question was, how much do you trust the electronic health record data that you're collecting? And the answer is it tells us something. It doesn't tell us as much as we want to know. There's a lot of information that's lost. There's a lot of hypothesis-driven collection of data that misses important data along the way. I think we are also interested in seeing how we can change how electronic health record data is captured over time so that it's more qualitative, because that's helpful for research as well.
All right, I appreciate everyone's enthusiasm and comments, but I am a guy who likes to keep on schedule. So we're going to move on. So our last speaker of this morning is Dr. Francis Collins. I know you all know him. He currently serves as the acting science advisor to President Biden, and he's the NIH Distinguished Investigator in the Intramural Program at the National Human Genome Research Institute. He has many accomplishments. If I would read them, it would take about an hour. But as you know, Francis Collins was the 16th director of the NIH over 3 administrations. It's an honor to have Francis here join us this morning. Big admirer, and I'm going to hand it over to you, Francis.
Thanks very much. And hello, everybody. Sorry I can't be there with you in person, but happy to join this Paradigm session and grateful for the invitation to tell you about something that I hope you could consider folding in to the ideas that you're developing, and that is a national initiative to eliminate hepatitis C in the United States. This is one of those once-in-a-generation moments where we actually have the capabilities of doing something about a terrible disease that's killing 15,000 people every year. And that number really ought to be 0 at this point because we have a cure. It's just not getting to the people, or at least not to a lot of the people who need that. Can I have the next slide? If you want to know the epidemiology of hepatitis C, you can see here what it looks like. There's a peak in the baby boomer generation. These are folks mostly who got infected with a blood transfusion that was carrying the virus, a very infectious virus indeed. And then there's a peak of millennials, and those are people who got exposed to contaminated blood, most likely through a tattoo needle or intravenous drug use. And especially if there's sharing of needles, this is now a big problem with the opioid crisis in this country. There are about 2.4 million people living with hepatitis C right now and not yet in a position to get cured. About 40% of them don't even know they have it, despite the fact that testing is supposed to be done more broadly now. Next slide. This is a really slow but very dangerous disease. You may have no symptoms for the first 5, 10, 15, even 20 years, but that virus is basically working away in the liver, creating progressive fibrosis, ultimately cirrhosis, and also a high risk of liver cancer. This is the most common cause of liver cancer now. And the cirrhosis, once it's gone to its ultimate really severe state, can only result in survival if one has access to a liver transplant. And again, lots of people don't. My brother-in-law died of this disease 10 years ago, and it is a very awful last 2 or 3 years of experience with this disease. And it ought now to be completely preventable. Please click the slide, because as of about 2014, there is an FDA-approved oral therapy from 2 different companies, Gilead and AbbVie, 1 pill a day for 8 to 12 weeks, essentially no side effects, 95 to 98% cure. How often have we had the chance to say something like that? And yet those 2.4 million people right now are not getting it. So why is that? Next slide. There's a lot of barriers that are in the way of achieving this. Let's recognize these are marginalized populations in many situations. Yes, they're heavily represented in rural communities. They're represented in communities that have gotten into struggles with opioid use. Certainly the prison system, because of the overlap with drug use, has turned out to be a place where as many as 40% of residents in state or federal prisons are Hep C positive, and yet they are not getting access to the cure. And some of that is because of the cost. The original cost for a 12-week course was $90,000, putting it way outside of the range of many facilities to be able to do this. We have to solve all of these problems at once in order to try to come up with a solution at a time where we had the chance to do so, but it's going to take some coordination. And that's what I've had the privilege of leading on behalf of the White House over the last 2 years, and which is now, I'm happy to say, on the brink of becoming potentially a reality, although there's still a few loose ends. Next slide. It's clear that we are not doing very well at this. Let's just look at the people who actually have a diagnosis of active hepatitis C virus in their liver. You would think at that point there'd be a strong motivation to get them cured. Well, only 1 in 3. And if you're under the age of 40 and you don't have health insurance, it's even lower. State Medicaid programs, are in a bind about this because at the current cost of the drug, which is down to about $24,000, they still can't afford in their annual budget to be able to go out and find all the people that are infected and cure them. So in many ways, they put up other kinds of barriers, like waiting until you have serious liver disease, which seems completely backwards when that's what you're trying to prevent. Next slide. So here's the proposal of the national initiative, which is now under intense discussion in the United States Congress after being proposed by the Biden-Harris administration. It has 3 parts. One is to develop and get FDA approval of a point-of-care diagnostic test, so you can do test and treat in a single visit. Right now, it takes 3 visits before that happens because the testing is kind of clunky. This is well on the way to becoming a reality. We believe this probably will be true in the US by June of this year, having already been applied successfully in Australia and parts of Europe from a Cepheid point-of-care testing that works very well. We need to figure out how to make the medications available. And here's another creative idea. Following a pilot that was run in Louisiana, this would be what you call a subscription model. The companies that provide the drugs, Gilead and AbbVie, would be asked basically to bid on an opportunity to receive a lump sum, in return for which they would make the drugs available for free to anybody on Medicaid, anybody uninsured, anybody in the prison system, and anybody who is cared for through the Indian Health Service, because there's a lot of Hep C in Native American communities. They are pretty interested in that. That was done in the state of Louisiana and Washington and a couple of other states, and it does look like a viable approach. And you can see what it does. It immediately provides an incentive to go and find everybody you can who's Hep C positive, because giving them the drug isn't going to cost another penny if they're on Medicaid or uninsured or in the prison system or on the reservation. The third part of this is to empower healthcare delivery to provide more capability for doing the testing and the treatment in places like the community health centers or the prisons. All of this has been mapped out in a very detailed 5-year plan and costed out to see how this could be done in about a 5-year period and to reach the majority of those 2.5 million people who are out there waiting for this opportunity to be cured of this terrible disease. What does it do? Next slide. In terms of its consequences, this is estimate by Jag Chatwal, who is an economist at Harvard, suggesting that within 10 years, you would prevent 24,000 liver-related deaths, and that would go to 69,000 within 20 years. And you can see the other numbers here, including diabetes and kidney disease, which happen to be induced by the presence of a chronic liver inflammation, and which can be reversed if the hepatitis is cured. And those are obviously also diseases that carry a lot of morbidity and cost a lot of money. So speaking of money, what would this save? Next slide. This is also Chatwal's calculations without going through the breakdown because of time. He would estimate in the first 10 years, you would save about $18.8 billion in healthcare costs because of all those people who now won't need a liver transplant and won't need treatment for liver cancer. The cost of the program itself is about $6 or $7 billion. So we would estimate that this is going to be cost savings within 10 years and dramatically so within 20. The Congressional Budget Office, though, gets to decide what the answer to that is. And that's where we are right now. I mean, literally right now, they've been working on this for the last 3.5 weeks, and we're hoping for a CBO score imminently. Because, next slide, we're in a pretty good place with bipartisan support for this legislation, which is being co-sponsored in the Senate by Senator Bill Cassidy and Senator Chris Van Hollen, to find its way into the package that we think is going to be formed by March the 8th of this year to fund the federal government, or at least the health part of it. So we could still see this become a reality as soon as 3 or 4 weeks from now, if everything goes well. But of course, things don't always go that well. So we'll have a plan B, of course. Finally, last slide then, what does this mean to all of you? What are the thoughts? Well, if you are in fact considering a proposal to Paradigm, I would argue hepatitis C is an ideal use case. Given the populations at risk, which are hard to reach, and their lack of access to healthcare, a lot of what Paradigm is trying to do is to fix that problem. Emergency rooms and mobile units in rural areas are all places where there is a lot of opportunity that's not currently being utilized. And with test and treat capabilities in one visit with this point of care test, there's a whole new world of ways now that we could begin to identify and get started on cure people with hepatitis C. And again, here the cure is so simple, and you can do the follow-up with telehealth. It's not like people have to come back regularly once they get started on the medication, because it is essentially free of side effects. So please consider using your best ideas and creativity here to bring this kind of condition into your thoughts about what kind of program might be put together for Paradigm. There's a great opportunity here for screening, for diagnosis, for treatment, the linkage to ongoing care in your proposal, and nothing would please me more than to see that emerge as part of this. And I want to thank Bond for being so encouraging to the idea that there might be a really exciting overlap here between what Paradigm is doing and what we hope to do nationwide to eliminate this disease. So I'll stop there and see if there are questions.
All right. A lot of applause here. Dr. Collins, thank you for leading the effort on eradicating hepatitis C in our country. We do have some time for questions, and I will read them back to you.
Okay. By the way, I put in the chat box for people that are watching remotely the New York Times op-ed that describes this initiative in a bit more detail.
There's a question in the back, Morgan.
How accurate is computed tomography for diagnosis of hepatitis C?
I think I heard the question. How accurate is CT, computer tomography for diagnosis? Not very helpful, actually, because that will tell you if there's fibrosis in the liver, although there are other ways to do that also with echoes or even something that measures the stiffness of the liver. The diagnosis really needs to be shown by detecting viral RNA in a blood sample. And the way in which this is going to be done with this point of care test is a finger stick, so it doesn't even require a phlebotomist, finger stick that will give you an answer within 1 hour or less, and directly detecting viral RNA using a PCR assay, which is what Cepheid has developed as part of their whole program. And it just takes a special cartridge designed to detect hepatitis C in the machines that are used in lots of places already for other kinds of diagnostics to make this happen. Right now, the way in which it's done, which takes 3 visits, as I said earlier, you start out with an antibody test, but that has to be sent off to a central lab. If you're positive for antibodies, that says you were exposed to hepatitis C, but it doesn't say whether you have active infection. So then you have to have a second test for viral RNA. That goes off to another lab. You can imagine the time that passes here. And then finally, in the 3rd visit, if somebody is still coming back because they don't feel sick, you might then get the diagnosis and get started. We lose a lot of people that way. And having this point of care test and treat 1 visit is going to be groundbreaking.
One question up in front here.
Thank you so much, Dr. Collins, for being here and for your work on this important issue. My name's Molly Williams, and I'm with Mobile Health Map at Harvard Medical School. I'd love to hear more about the potential you mentioned of free access to the medication for people in these high-risk categories of uninsured, Medicaid, incarcerated. How can you say just a little bit more how that could happen?
Sure. So basically, the federal government in this model, and again, we're waiting for Congress to approve this, would do a one-time negotiation with the companies, Gilead and AbbVie, maybe one of them, maybe both of them, and basically agree to pay them a lump sum to make it worth their while to play ball. And that a lump sum having been agreed to, they would then have their medications made available for free to those categories of individuals that I mentioned, people covered on Medicaid, the uninsured, people in the state, federal, and county jails, and also people on the Native American reservation covered by the Indian Health Service. We've got the logistics all worked out about how that would happen. So it would be such a game changer in terms of access to what is at the current time a very steep barrier for people to actually get the cure that they need.
One more question for Dr. Collins.
Thank you, Dr. Collins, for the presentation. My name is Nirmal Kaur. I'm CEO of Syncoro Health, and I'm also a gastroenterologist by background. My question is regarding the medical management of the cirrhotics. Is that something that the program that you're suggesting is already built into the logistics that you have, or is that something that would rely on the TA1 performer for Paradigm?
It would require the person seeing the patient to get some sense about whether they have advanced liver disease. Fortunately, there is no reason to withhold the therapy. There are certainly people with pretty far advanced cirrhosis who have benefited from the cure if it was initially the cause being hepatitis C. But obviously, if somebody has signs of cirrhosis, they're going to need referral for care of what's already a pretty significant amount of organ damage. And that's sort of also folded into the legislation. But the vast majority of people, of those 2.5 million people that are out there infected, actually are not that far along in terms of the cause or the seriousness of the liver damage, and won't need much more. This is actually a pretty simple paradigm of diagnose and treat. We think actually for most individuals who are otherwise healthy, this is the kind of thing that could be conducted readily by nurse practitioners or PAs with appropriate algorithms to follow.
Great. All right. Well, thank you, Dr. Collins. I know you have an extremely busy schedule. It was tremendous to hear about your vision and leadership. Thanks for joining us today.
Nice to be with you. Go Paradigm.
Woo. All right. Welcome back. It is 1 p.m. here in Arizona, and we're going to enter into the technical area specific breakout sessions. There's also concurrent poster sessions next door, so we're going to be bouncing in between the two. But before we dive in, Adri has a few housekeeping items.
Right. There are a couple of questions that have come up throughout the day today that I want to make sure we address for everyone. One of the questions is, can an organization be a sub-awardee on multiple teams within a single TA? And the answer is yes. Another question came up, can an organization submit a proposal as a prime performer and a sub-awardee on a separate team on a single TA. Currently, the solicitation says you cannot do that. We are changing it so that you can. So you will be able to submit as both a prime and a sub on another team on a single TA. Another question came in about abstracts. You can submit 2 abstracts on a single TA. There have been a lot of questions that have come up about, can we address somebody's specific solution? We've had a lot of people this morning kind of pitching ideas to us and telling us about your capabilities. I want to let you know, in these afternoon sessions, the team here cannot give you feedback on your specific solution, on anything that you plan to propose, on anything that you currently have in the works. If you are interested, please submit an abstract. That is where you will receive your feedback, but we can't give you specific feedback during the proposers day today. And with that, I'll turn it over to Bon and his team. Thank you.
And we're not doing this to be mean, but to really help you. The abstracts are simple. They're 3 pages, and it's a great way to get feedback. Here is the lineup for the afternoon sessions. We're going to have a little break in between each of the TA specific sessions. And I looked at some great posters. I'm going to try to bounce in between back and forth so I could take a deep dive into those posters. So thanks so much for those who have come out and made the time to prepare those posters. I encourage folks to interact with other teams because there may be some partnerships that are built through today. So that's what we have hoped to accomplish. All right, so a reminder of TA1, we want to go to that future use case where a patient living in a rural area does not have to travel 25, 50, 75, and 100 miles to obtain a hospital level service. There are some questions about exactly what is a hospital level service. We're not dictating what those clinical use cases are. It's broad, and we left it that way not to be prescriptive, but to invite creativity in the types of clinical use cases that you might propose. What makes a strong proposal? Again, this video will be posted on our website. So these are some examples of what makes a strong proposal. One is to focus on the HRSA-defined health professional shortage area site. So we don't want to put these units and do these demonstrations in an area where there's already a plethora of healthcare providers. We want to tackle the healthcare deserts in rural counties. And we want to stretch the imagination of what's capable of being provided outside of the walls of a hospital. We don't want to make an incremental change. I think this paradigm of delivering advanced care in a building is an outdated one. We have advances in technology and miniaturization and connectivity to be able to deliver advanced services outside of a traditional brick and mortar facility. So we're looking for those moonshots of what is capable of being done outside of a hospital, and to not give lesser care, but that care is as equally effective. So that's why we have a few years to do these demonstrations to prove out this model. And financial sustainability. We know this is a very hard problem because the economics don't work because of low patient volumes in rural areas. The way our healthcare system is designed is you need to do a lot of services and to make money. There aren't patients there are areas that aren't densely populated. So the economics currently aren't working. That's why we see a lot of hospital closures. We're hoping to find creative ways to make it worthwhile for existing providers to bring these essential services back into these communities. A couple of points to highlight in the program solicitation. Remember, this is the manual. Everything that we're saying here is going to be reflective of what's in the solicitation. So I want to point out the milestones and the deliverables in the schedule. And here are some of the key deliverables. Again, this is all in the solicitation. One thing that we're looking for is strong engagement with a community. We're doing something different. It's important that patients feel that they are getting care that's equivalent or if not even better than in a hospital. And we want to be able to communicate that they are not getting lesser care, but this is a new form factor to receive advanced hospital level care. And we need to prove that this model is effective, that the clinical effectiveness of delivering care outside the walls of the hospital. So we're looking for TA1 performers to come up with a research plan and how to measure the impact of the clinical use case that they are providing. This is in the program solicitation, the metric slide. So please pay attention to this. This is what we're going to hold TA1 performers accountable to. And one goal is to increase the number of services being provided in this mobile care delivery platform. So stronger performers will increase the number of clinical services in the lifetime of this program. So if you're a performer and you just have one isolated use case over 5 years, that's great. But a performer who at the end of 5 years has maybe 5 or 7 clinical use cases, I think it's going to be a much stronger proposal. All right, I'm just going to leave this out here. And the purpose of this time is to get your questions. We really appreciate them. As you can see, we respond to questions quickly. We're making changes and amendments into our solicitation based upon good feedback that we have gotten from you all here and online as well. So please online submit your questions to us in the link ask a question section on the Paradigm website. We have a mic here for questions. So we'll please ask you to come to the mic to ask questions. And yes, Carlin.
While people are coming to the mic, I just want to address something that came up in the early session as part of TA1. The idea of trust came up and the idea that in rural communities and communities anywhere, this is a new program and this will be a new form factor. And so in a couple of slides ago, you saw one of the key deliverables was a community viability plan. And that's where we want to see performers showing that they have engaged all stakeholders in the community and have worked to build that trust. So wanted to just come back to that very important point.
Yeah. And Carlin Beer and Morgan Hutchinson are in the Paradigm team. They're technical advisors. So they'll help field and answer questions. Great. So we'll go to you.
It's not clear to me how a small business, for example, a small business with a solution, but not an entire solution to the entire TA would fit in. Should we submit our abstracts and you would then, put us together perhaps with others, or is it incumbent upon us to find a prime and then try to become a subcontractor of that prime?
Thank you for your question. So can you hear me? The teaming is definitely encouraged here.
We will not team for you. You need to find a team. Yeah. Because you can imagine there's a number of people here, 4 or 5x that in the virtual audience, the number of proposals coming in that if you don't feel like you don't have the capabilities, you will have to find a prime or sub to match the capabilities that will deliver the metrics on the slide. That's why we have the proposals days for you to meet each other. That's why we have a teaming page. And so I encourage you to go on the website and go on the teaming page and connect with others if you don't feel like your company has the capabilities to meet the metrics and the milestones.
And does that have to happen prior to the abstract or the full proposal, the teaming?
So, Adria, do you want to take that question or do you want me to?
You don't have to have your entire team identified at the abstract stage. If you don't have everyone identified at the abstract stage, we encourage you to at least explain what types of partners you're looking for and how you intend to incorporate them into your team. I encourage you to have as many of your partners identified in your proposal, because one of the evaluation criteria is your team's capabilities, right? So if your proposal comes in and we can't evaluate the capability of the entire team, it's going to be very, very difficult to select that proposal for award. That doesn't mean you might not have a gap here or there in your team. And if you do, you need to make sure that you are clearly explaining how you're going to fill it, who you plan to fill it with, so that the government evaluators feel comfortable that you're not going to fall behind in performance of your program because you still haven't found that team member.
Hi, Rashid Kamaleshwaran from Duke University. Question that I have is around the use cases. Are the use cases that are most responsive at a certain level of impact, or are they associated to a certain level of impact? The reason I ask is the clinical feasibility studies, in order to get the power calculations and the sample size, you may be looking at a longer time period than what's proposed. So does that preclude us from proposing more challenging, maybe use cases that could have profound impact, but may require, maybe a longer time frame for recruitment and feasibility? The second part of the question is, do these things have to be tied to the EV? And the reason why I ask is that some of these use cases, we may be able to demonstrate them, but demonstrate them independently to show that they have clinical utility in a remote site. But do they have to be within the EV, which further restricts the recruitment sample size or recruitment site, elongates the timeline, and increases costs? Thank you.
Can you just stay up just in case we have follow-up questions? You want to?
Sure. I think we're expecting strong proposals to both look at challenging big services and others to be thinking about providing how many different services can we provide that aren't necessarily as challenging. So I would not discourage you from that approach as long as it can meet all of the requirements in the solicitation.
So how is that tied to the timeline? Because I think it's critical. Some of these, just take some cases like cardiac arrest or pneumonia, or, they may not occur as frequently in urban settings as they do in rural settings as they do in urban settings. So if we were looking at clinical feasibility and achieving a product which has a good p-value or can demonstrate a sufficient p-value, that would require a level of recruitment and complexity, which I'm not seeing how that fits into this.
Yeah, so I think you're getting so when we talk about clinical effectiveness studies, so we're not looking for a multi-center randomized control trial that because that is out of the scope of the program, but we do want to see some evidence that this is working. And so it's not going to be at the one end of we don't expect the rigor of a randomized controlled clinical trial, right? That is not what we're proposing here, but you do have to provide evidence that this is making an impact or getting to make an impact. And then you hadn't, what was the latter part of your question? Can you repeat that?
I think some of these use cases can be demonstrated independently, especially if we want to show that they can be implemented in a rural setting with low-skill providers. But by tying them to other TAs, specifically this mobile unit, again, it has an impact on recruitment, on a lot of things that goes into the design of feasibility studies are constrained by that. So I'm just wondering, do you want the feasibility studies to be demonstrated as a package with all of those components in, or do you want them to be, that X condition can be managed with low resources by proficiency level Y in, what is it that you're looking for that's responsive to the call?
I think that some of the questions are very granular, and there is, in fact, a lot of flexibility and room for creativity in how you approach these milestones in TA1. So the research study, what does your research study look like? What are your use cases? Like we're looking to, the proposers to submit things that follow the requirements outlined in the solicitation, but, think about the creatively, like how you can approach this.
And we did build simulations allowed. You'll see in the milestone table, during phase 1, we want you to be thinking about that care in a CDP that does not yet exist. And so we have said, simulate that care, create a room that is the shape of a CDP and start thinking about that delivery. So that's part of the creative approach that you can say that you can build those test environments into the simulation space and inform those clinical studies.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hi, Travis Lefevre, Mission Mobile Medical. We're going to be a prime on TA2, but a sub to TA1. And my question is about the financial sustainability model. When you talk about financial sustainability, do you envision us building that model around current kind of cash flow reimbursement structures, or is there, and specifically for hospital type services, or is there a market for government agencies, community health centers, like any focus there or guidance?
I think the approach can, again, be creative in this area, but it should be demonstrated during the scope of the program.
So we're not going to develop a new CPT code if that's what you're asking. Even though we're the government, like that's not what we do as an agency. And so we're a research agency, but I think we are inviting models that may one day lead to a new type of reimbursement code. And there's a lot of variability within payers from county to county, from state to state, region to region. So what may be reimbursable in one state may not be reimbursable in another state. So we're looking for experts like yourself who know that payer landscape and can deliver a service that a payer will reimburse or may reimburse in the future. But I think right now, payers aren't that interested in this space. They're not interested in reimbursing for services delivered outside of a brick and mortar facility. And we need to prove it to them and other stakeholders that, hey, we can deliver care that is quality advance in this different sort of platform. And that's one of the goals for this TA is to prove that out to them.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Sony from UMass Medical School on behalf of a coalition of 4 academic medical centers, mostly in rural regions. As we think about this, there's clinical delivery component and research component. And based off of some of the solicitation, the clinical work is not starting until year 3. But there is a lot of clinical adjacent work that needs to happen if there is a CMS waiver that the academic medical center that's going to be providing through the satellite sites hospital at home program, they may need to apply for a CMS waiver. Could those be considered as part of clinical work in the years 1 through 2? And a corollary of that is, while could we envision providing hospital at home level care outside the brick and mortar facility, but not through care delivery platform in the first 2 years, where the care delivery platform that may act as emergency room on wheels and command center for the hospital at home, could we I guess, jumpstart some of the at-home care models in the first 2 years, or are we restricted to year 3 onwards?
I'm just going to point to this slide here. So like looking at some of these metrics of, these like clinical workflow simulations. Yeah, 100%. So if you are designing a new type of care service and need to do a workflow simulation, like it needs to comply with these metrics that we have built out. And if you think our metrics suck and these aren't the right milestones, tell us, because we may be able to change and pivot. But we've done a lot of interviews with experts like yourself and conducted a pretty extensive landscape analysis. And we think there is an opportunity there to start developing a plan to deliver these types of services that you mentioned before the actual like year 2/3 of direct patient care, because setting up a new clinical service line is a lot of work, and there's a lot of prep that needs to go before that.
And I think these metrics make a lot of sense, but I guess could we use clinical budget early in year 1 and 2 as part of being able to provide care? Or one of the tables shows that there is a non-applicable cell for clinical operating costs before year 3. And I guess another way of asking this is, if we are overachieving in terms of being able to provide care at home without the care delivery platform, but in year 1 and 2, can we use Paradigm funding to offset the costs for provision of that care?
I think this is a really good question. It's come up a lot of times. So the budget should outline the scope of work that's described in the solicitation. This is a good question from you, and we've gotten it from others. So that's a question that we'll circle back and post on the FAQ page. But thank you.
Yeah. It's a lot of them.
Hi, Louis Montez with Mindset Medical. You had mentioned this morning that you were not going to be working with any devices that require FDA clearance.
I don't think I said that, but yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Okay, so I was assuming that was because of cost being prohibitive, especially in rural areas, deployment, things like that. Is software as a medical device then something that would be on the table?
Great. Okay. So I understand Carlin has a great response to this.
Yeah, no, so I think we've got a lot of questions about FDA approval. And so I want to address that one first. And then this kind of gets into what is the thing that I'm dreaming of? Like, which TA does that fit with? So I'm hearing kind of those two questions. The first one is with FDA approval. We've got a timeline, as you saw in Ron's slides and as you have seen in the proposal and in the solicitation. And if your device requires FDA approval and that can't happen by the time milestones and metrics need to be met, then it's probably not something that you should propose to. I know there's a lot of folks with, great ideas for devices. And if that's not something that can fit in with the schedule of the Paradigm program, then it's not something that would work for us. To get to the other point about where do different TAs, so the answer, I'm just going to read you the answer that I wrote here, and it's that TA1 performers provide care and are accountable for collecting and communicating the device-related and other requirements for their CDP-based care use cases, communicating those to TA2 performers, who is the integrators and the builders of the CDP. TA2 performers, as the integrator, own the development and integration of devices required for TA1's use cases, noting that devices required by TA1 that can't be developed in time to meet TA1 and TA2 metrics and milestones will not meet the needs of the program. There are a couple of notable exceptions, I think, as people are probably thinking of right now. The miniaturized CT scanner in TA4 is an exception. That FDA approval is built into those requirements. Device interoperability and software infrastructure is covered in TA3. And devices specifically required for staff upskilling and intelligent task guidance is covered in TA5. So coming back to your question about software, again, TA3 milestones and metrics are that's the North Star that you want to think about with your proposal.
Excellent. Thank you.
All right, so I apologize. We are at time. If you have additional questions, you can submit them through the Ask a Question page. I do want to address two more questions that came in that are applicable to everyone. One of them from this morning was about the abstract template. If you read through the special notice where we requested abstracts, there is a template included in that document. So please, like I said this morning, read everything, but the template is there. Another question that keeps coming up is about budgets for the awards. We are not publicly sharing what the paradigm budget is. We are going to, as you see, eval criteria 4 outlines how we're going to evaluate your budget submissions. But we aren't, we don't have a set limit that we're giving you guys for each award. And with that, we will take our break and move into the TA2 session.
All right. Welcome back in person. Welcome back online.
So I'm going to repeat, if you guys were here for the last session, sorry, you're going to hear it again. Question about, can you be a sub-awardee on multiple teams within the same TA? The answer is yes. Can you be a prime awardee and a sub-awardee on the same TA? The answer is yes. We will be changing the solicitation to reflect that. The abstract template is included in the special notice document where we requested abstracts, so please read that thoroughly. One organization can submit 2 abstracts for the same TA. The team won't be able to give you feedback today on specific technologies that you're developing, specific solutions to Paradigm. The abstract is your place to get that feedback. So please, I encourage you to submit the abstracts. And we are not, we're not handing out budget caps or limits for each award. We're going to be evaluating your budgets as listed in the 4th evaluation criteria in the solicitation. So we're not going to dictate where your budgets should fall. And
thank you. So as I said this morning, we're trying to build the next generation advanced mobile care unit. One key feature that we're looking for is that it be multifunctional, but based upon one standard platform. Currently, the landscape is a lot of these mobile units are one-offs, they're single purpose, they're hard to re-engineer for another clinical use case. So we want to standardize that and build a platform that can reach rural areas of the US. And, I think we could take advantage of the miniaturization on a lot of these devices that have already been FDA approved. I know there's folks here working on developing new types of devices. That's great. And I've gotten some questions on, can we still submit if our device is not approved? If you are submitting to TA1, you saw the timeline that we need to start doing direct patient care demonstrations by year 3 of the program. So that is a limitation. So we will consider that when you submit our proposal. So if we don't think you're going to get FDA approved by year 3 of the program, then how are you going to provide those demonstrations with your device and clinical use case? Is the lack of internet connectivity in many of our regions of our country. So these units are going to have to be able to function in those types of environments. And also one thing that's not on here as well, there's a lot of different temperature regions in our country. So, and we have an EV-based platform. There's challenges there. So this is going to be hard. So if your team does not have experience building, outfitting these things, working with some of these technical challenges, then this technical area might not be the best fit for you. This TA has a very important job to integrate with the other performers for all of the rest of the program from TA1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. They're going to have to give those swap requirements to those other performers, be able to integrate their technologies as they mature. You have to work closely with the TA1 performers who are providing direct clinical care and making sure that there is not a disruption in the services they are delivering. What makes a strong performer? Again, that the platform is multifunctional and that there's a deep consideration for the user experience needs, both for the clinical staff who will be operating the platform and the patients who would be receiving care in these platforms. As some of us here, including myself, have delivered care in mobile health unit platforms. Sometimes there's a challenge there with perceptions of the care that patients and communities are receiving. So we need to ensure that patients and communities feel that they are getting the proper care through these platforms. Again, these are in the program solicitation, and I just want to highlight the milestones and deliverables. If you haven't taken a look at this, please do, because these are the metrics that we will hold performers to. Again, this is a 5-year program. And one point I want to highlight that there needs to be a fleet management system set in place, because we don't want there to be a disruption in the services that the TA1 performer are providing. I keep this on here and use this time to invite folks up for questions and open up to any comments from the rest of the team here. So if you ask a question, please come to the mic and ask the question.
Well, while you guys are coming up, I want to quickly address a few questions that came up that are sort of in the similar theme of the EV infrastructure, the size, weight, power concerns. There is going to be a lot of close work with TA1 in TA2. So I would also suggest taking a look at the TA1 section in detail, as there are also specifications for what they're proposing and where they're working, what sorts of devices they're using, what kind of EV infrastructure, baseline is needed. So please take a look at TA1.
Hi, good afternoon. I have, let me just adjust this. I have 3 short questions. The first one was with regards to the secondary battery requirement for the operation of the vehicle. I saw a statement made that we need a 50 kilowatt hour battery peak capacity for 8 hours. Has your team done any analysis on, what the total battery support requirement would be for all the devices on board? Is that something that TA1 and 2 would do together downstream?
TA1 and TA2 do together.
Okay, so you're outsourcing it. Have you considered what degree of regularization these vehicles would require at that rural edge? Are you looking at OEM vehicles that are repurposed for this purpose, or do they need significant upgrading in terms of suspension and drivetrain for that performance, or is that a case-by-case basis?
Case-by-case basis. So if you have a farmer who's proposes a clinical service in December in Alaska in the mountains, then that unit needs to be equipped for that terrain. So we're basing it upon the TA1 performer, what region select, what service they're going to provide, what patient population they're trying to reach. And so that's why the TA2 needs to integrate and work closely with the TA1 performer and provide that continuous feedback loop. But we will, and we don't know what those clinical use cases are until we receive abstracts and proposals.
Okay, and then I have Two more, if it's okay. Just cut me off.
I want to just quickly mention the question about the research on the battery capacity. Yes, we have done research in multiple different scenarios there. But as mentioned, like this will be, the specifics will be determined by TA 1 and 2.
Yeah, I think the question was specifically relating to peak performance versus continuous performance, because a continuous performance battery at 50 kilowatt hour, 8 hours for would cost, well, with an average density would be about a 4,000 pound battery. So you can't use the vehicle battery for that scenario. So assuming that you have power on the ground, and every scenario would be different, but we can model that out effectively. My next question.
We're allowing like level 3 chargers to be installed and for the unit to be plugged into it as well. They don't have to operate continuously for like 1 week just on a battery charge, but oh yeah.
Yeah, we saw that.
Oh yeah, okay.
And then there's just an abstract question with regards to, custom so buy versus build, right? If you are going to, do you see the most effective approach from your perspective as a partnership with the current OEM that will also invest significantly alongside this program over the next 5 years and develop their technologies? Or are you encouraging custom solutions from the ground up?
Custom solutions from the ground up would be challenging. We're expecting that that's not the only approach that we would get. That there's a possibility that it would be partnership with a vehicle manufacturer, or that it would be optimization of something that may already exist.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Shorter. Rick Anthony with STI. My question is around the multifunctionality. I'm a little confused. Is one CDP supposed to be able to do all the different functions, or are you going to, in that you would switch them out if a hospital system was divided, or are you going to be building each one with the capacity to? Because a CT unit would
switch them out.
Switch them out?
Yeah, we don't expect one unit to have a CT, MRI, ultrasound, X-ray, but that single platform can
have those loaded on it.
Yes.
Okay, because the power requirements for something like that versus a dialysis clinic or a phlebotomy suite would be quite a bit different.
100%.
You'd be overkilling it to build it for the design of a CT versus something that might be used more for blood screening.
Yeah. I mean, we're going to give some flexibility with, obviously, the swap for a CT is going to be a lot different from running an EKG machine, but we're designing it for the swap of a future CT that's miniaturized. So if the CT performer does their job correctly, that swap is going to be significantly less than current CT requirements.
And just one real quick question. The sequence of production, is my understanding there's going to be a couple of TAs and we're going to be equipping them the first end of by year 2, each with one, like there'll be 3 CTA ones, each will get 1 CDP, and then later they'll get, by end of year 3, they'll have 9 CDPs, and each one of the TA ones will get 3. Is that how this is laid out? I'm trying to get a handle of the production numbers.
That's correct. So as you outlined that each of the 3 TA1 performers would have 3 CDPs. Can we turn the audience mic up?
Closer. I think it's just got to be in the mic.
Yeah, I appreciate it. If people don't hear questions or us, just yell at us, and Travis, yell.
Yeah, I think we just need to speak into the mic a little bit closer. Do you hear me now? You can always hear me. You guys ready? All right. So I have 2 questions. One is about the bandwidth description. Concern, I guess. There's some concern, and our teaming partner for the provider infrastructure hardware is providing like low Earth orbit internet service provider to, real-time C2 environments for aircraft carriers. Like they don't see a concern. Is there something you guys know that is not obvious about bandwidth requirements?
Sorry, like bandwidth, like.
Is there like an extreme bandwidth in your vision required for the work that you're doing for like task guidance? More than like a gig?
Yeah. Are we talking about, sorry, are we talking about like internet broadband bandwidth
Yes,
requirements?
broadband
Like
bandwidth.
okay.
Yeah, wireless
Yeah.
bandwidth.
Yeah.
And from our perspective, it was understanding that the US map is covered with internet dead zones. And so we want to ensure that operation can continue fully in areas where you simply don't have a signal, where, you might otherwise think about things like sat phones and other solutions. So it wasn't coming from a place of, having expert knowledge of particular bandwidth requirements of certain devices, just because so much of that is going to be up to the performers.
Okay, it's just to make sure it's covered, right?
Yeah.
Rather than a particular concern.
Yeah, satellite has enough broadband connectivity for these clinical services. So we did some analysis on that.
All right. My second question is about the task guidance system. When we built training aids vehicles for the Navy, the task guidance was built into the vehicle. Is your intent for task guidance to stand alone or be integrated into the vehicle itself?
Our expectation is that the development of the task guidance software will take a significant amount of time, which is why it's not integrated into the CDP immediately when that's delivered to TA1. The expectation for TA5 is going to be that they're integrated into the CDP by the end of the program in accordance with their metrics and milestones. They're not building a software system that necessarily would only function in the CDP. We hope that they will be able to apply it to other settings, but it is going to be configured for that specific environment and their scope of work.
Thanks.
Paul with Tesco Specialty Vehicles. Thanks for having me today. So a quick question, is there any aptitude for a mixed model of having some fuel source on these units, or is that a non-starter?
Can people hear? Oh yeah.
I was talking into the mic too. It's better.
All right, we're switching out mics for the virtual audience.
Is that better?
Yes.
All right. It's Paul with Tesco Specialty Vehicles. Thanks for having us. Two questions. The first one I had is in terms of the EV side of it. Is there any aptitude to have fuel on this at all in terms of a backup source or a supplement?
Like what kind of
generator?
Hydrogen or like
fossil fuels?
Fossil fuels. I think we're open to. It's interesting that you would say that, but I think we're open to what's out there. We realize that some of these environments are going to be a lot more difficult, like especially with frontier environments in the US, where the EV charging infrastructure, as you know, has not been built up, and extreme cold environments. So. Again, this is a 5-year program. So, we're looking at that future state. And so we want to go to where the puck is going in terms of like EV and hoping that infrastructure will be built up in rural America. Or it'd be a little bit more complete than it is, but I think we are open to additional fuel sources outside of EV and am I right on that? Yeah. Right. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And then I apologize if this is in the finer details. When you is there a clear definition on what's fleet management and especially the role when I think about like drivers in the field, if it's a mobile unit and so forth, what's the arrangement between T1 and T2 on that?
Yeah. Well, yeah.
I think that, first of all, this is a very challenging TA. We're aware of that. We're asking a lot of things. Meeting all of the requirements in the solicitation, that is sort of our baseline expectation. We understand that there are going to be different approaches and things like the backup fuel source that haven't been specifically described in the solicitation. So we're open to creative solutions there. And yeah, does that answer your question?
Sure. I think what we're trying to do with this is hospitals and providers don't want to be in the business of maintaining vehicles, operating vehicles when they break down, fixing them. I've been there. I've driven vans and gotten them repaired and done maintenance or troubleshooting on them. And so and I'm an emergency room doctor. That's not my forte, but there's no one else in the health system that can do that. So we want to, at the end of the program, envisioning just a turnkey solution for the provider. So that's why we're shifting that burden over to the TA2 performer to be able to take that off the plate for the TA1 performer providing the clinical services, so they could just worry about that. So I think, and again, it's not a huge fleet, right? There's it's 12 to 16 in operation at any time. So, but we need to ensure that the TA2 performer is going to fix these vehicles when they break, and to get them back online as quickly as possible, and just to make sure there's an explicit plan about that, of how they're going to do that.
Helpful. Thank you. That's what I figured.
Question. Sorry, it just struck me. So on the e-charging, we talked about our e-mobility partner. Obviously, we have the cost for the charging infrastructure. That's not going in TA1, right? Like that should be in our cost, our ROM for the abstract, everything, all the charging infrastructure that we manage, install, that's us, right?
All of the costs, yes. So I think this sort of addresses both of these questions. So all of the costs related to fleet management and installation of EV infrastructure are TA2.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah, but there are, I think there's opportunity there to look at those providers or systems for TA1, that identifying locations that may already have EV charging infrastructure already set up. There's a lot of public facing points of access there. So, we don't want to be in the business of building a EV charging infrastructure. That's not the goal of this program. So the more opportunities to leverage existing EV networks, I think will make a stronger proposal.
Yeah, fair enough. I was just making sure that if anyone was going to be responsible for capturing it or coordinating it, that it was in our court.
Yeah, definitely TA2. Yeah, so TA2 has a lot of different types of coordination that needs to get done.
Got it. Thanks.
This is also covered in part of TA1. So I agree with the recommendation for TA2 performers to read TA1 and vice versa. There's a part that describes electric vehicle charging sites, and these areas should have enough existing infrastructure to feasibly install electric vehicle charging stations, and performers in TA1 should coordinate with TA2 to get those installed.
Got it. Thank you.
One more time, FDA question. If you have technologies that they are ready to go, and the FDA approval can happen in the very first year, is that acceptable for this?
For this?
For TA2.
So
Yeah. So if it is possible to have the product ready to go in the first year, then it sounds like you'd be able to meet all of the requirements. And if you are able to meet all of the requirements definitively, then that would not preclude a proposal.
So you're not going to, I wanted to point out that TA2 performer is not prescribing the clinical use cases. So they're not coming in saying, we're going to do dialysis and we're going to put this machine that we built into this unit. The TA1 performer is going to prescribe the clinical use case and go, okay, if it is dialysis, then they will work with you to select the best unit to be able to fit into the mobile vehicle.
So if you have a technology which is already gone through clinical trials and ready to be submitted to FDA, then it can get approved hopefully in the first year.
If that device is approved by the schedule outlined in TA1 to provide clinical care, then it needs to meet that metric, right? It can't be approved in year 6 of the program because the program is going to be over.
And that's something you can put in your abstract and your proposal. You can say, you know, we understand that the fact that we don't have approval in hand will raise some concerns. Here's our plan to achieve that by the milestones, and here's how we plan to do it. So those types of explanations are really important for reviewers as well.
Makes sense. Thank you, because we have some that is ready to go, and we want to know if we should incorporate, and these are leading edge technologies, and we want to know if we could incorporate them or not.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Great. On a time, Adrian, we can't take one more. Okay, I guess we're out of time, so we're going to jump into TA3 in a few minutes, in 10 minutes. Okay, great.
If you're here for TA3, we're going to get started. All right, if you've been in either of the last 2 sessions, I'm going to repeat my announcements for those who were not here. Questions that have come up throughout the day. Yes, you can be a sub-awardee on multiple teams within one TA. Yes, you can be a prime awardee and a sub-awardee, 2 different teams within the same TA. The abstract template is included in the special notice document where we requested abstracts. It's posted on SAM. A single organization can submit 2 abstracts for the same TA. We're not providing budget caps for the overall program or for individual awards. We will evaluate your budgets as listed in the eval criteria number 4 in the solicitation. And we cannot give feedback on specific technology, specific solutions as part of Proposers Day. We also, because I've noticed those questions are now coming in through the Ask a Question, we won't give you feedback there either. The abstract is where you will get feedback on your solutions.
All right. So when we were building out this program, we realized, hey, we could put all these clinical services in a mobile healthcare unit delivery platform, but we don't have the software to get that data out of this unit and to communicate that patient data back to EHRs. So we wanted to create a agnostic software platform that can retrieve data from devices that are vendor agnostic of the different medical devices proposed by TA1, and to be able to communicate that data to any existing and future EHR systems. We know that there are many folks here in this room and listening who are working on medical device interoperability software, plug and play systems. We think this is a critical architecture that needs to be built into the vehicle platform for this to be a scalable solution. More and more care is being distributed outside the confines of a brick and mortar facility. And because of that, we really need a platform like this that can retrieve that data. So here are some of the key deliverables in written format. This is all, again, in the program solicitation. And, you know, a couple of challenges is that this architecture software platform needs to work in environments where power may be disconnected. There may not be great internet connectivity. So there's a lot of challenges for this medical device plug and play architecture. And, you know, we want to be able to, as much as possible, normalize that data that's coming in, integrate it, and to be able to bring that data back to the EHR system of the provider that is delivering services in those vehicles. And our hope at the end of the program is that there's a commercial transition program that this platform can be used broadly not only in mobile healthcare delivery, but in other distributed care platforms. Again, I'm going to highlight some of the metrics and milestones that are in the program solicitation. So they'll have, we have very specific metrics that need to be accomplished by specific months in the program. And this is going to require working with that TA1 performer as well. And here are some of the metrics that we outline for the program. So I've gotten a couple of questions around, does this need to be totally open source? That is a goal that, well, let me tell you what it can't be. It can't be a closed proprietary system. So our goal is to make this platform available to as many folks in the healthcare ecosystem as possible. So this TA may be a little bit more straightforward than the other TAs. I'm not sure about that, but let's see. We'll open it up to questions both in person and also to folks online as well.
And I'll also just add that our goal is not to create an entirely new standard or silo. What we want to do is we want to see a gravity that people come to and say, that's really working. We're going to adopt the standards and approaches used by this TA3 work. You know, we know that ONC doesn't tell people what to do, but ONC has been kind of created in a grassroots way, and now it has its own gravity. And so when you read the solicitation, that sentiment should come through, that there's not a prescription there, but we want to see that gravity enhanced.
Yeah, and also, we know that there are many folks in this room and listening who are already working on these technologies, and you can leverage existing technologies. But again, we don't want just iterative improvement. You know, we want this to be a huge improvement over what's currently out there.
Question surrounding AHR compatibility, and Aparvasoni from UMass again. The kind of metrics of more than 6 EHR, if the TA1 performers are working with health systems that do not have more than a certain amount of EHRs, are there different ways that we can demonstrate compatibility, or is it always compatibility through clinical use case? And how much of TA3's interoperability also pertains to research evaluation and the research tasks that will be done by task M1, in that if there is remote data collection that needs to happen for clinical effectiveness demonstration, does TA3 also need to respond to that? Or is it purely for interoperability of CDP and how it interacts with the regional hospitals?
I think at minimum, it needs to work with the EHR systems of the TA1 performers, but it needs to expand beyond that. So yeah, good point, because, you know, what if we get TA1 performers who just work with one system out there? I'm not going to name that system, but we know who they are. And TA3 performer will also have to recognize that there are other EHR systems, and there's systems coming in the pipeline. There's existing formats, newer data formats. So they don't have to be fed that clinical use case as much as like to the TA2 performer. So there's more independence in this in TA3 to build that software architecture.
And just a quick follow-up, how much dependency or collaboration could we have with other ARPA-H programs like BDF, the Big Data Framework program that allows for some of this interoperability in coordination with Technical Aim 1 to be able to go beyond just the capacity that paradigm program would have?
Can you be a little bit more granular and
So big data framework program, which is amassing kind of big data platform. If that happens to also exist in the regions where the care is being provided, how much can TA3 and TA1 leverage the work that's happening in the BDF program? Or is it all new work that needs to be proposed?
Biomedical Data Fabric is another ARPA-H program that you're describing. And the question is, since the metrics require the TA3 performer to go beyond just the TA1 performers and demonstrating the effectiveness of the technology, are they able to collaborate with Biomedical Data Fabric?
You're right.
Adria, do you have an answer immediately to that? Or if not, that's something we'll address in the FAQ page. Thank you.
Hi, Patrick Chitwood from Palantir. I have a question about how you're thinking about the EHRs. So there's obviously EHRs on the truck, and then there's the EHRs from potentially rural hospitals that exist in proximity. And you could imagine a situation in which a doctor needs to consult with whoever is on the truck. And so is it basically you're going to be deploying EHRs that already exist at community hospitals, and then the truck is deployed in a sort of regional fashion where it shares the same EHR, or is there a custom EHR on the truck and then a separate EHR that maybe?
Yes, same EHR. We're definitely not building a customized EHR for the truck. That would be an entirely new program, but great point in that we want the provider who's providing clinical services in the mobile health unit platform is going to be using their existing EHR system.
Okay. And then amongst a lot of the other TAs, there's obviously a lot going on in to be able to build something like this. And so there's some interesting software problems that are in the other TAs. So for example, something like Tesla was brought up, fixing the trucks. Well, there's an interesting like fleet management aspect there and how that actually occurs, which of course I think is a software problem, but in these types of things, but maybe we wouldn't actually be well suited to be like a sub on those TAs. I'm just curious if there's like, in the actual process, if there's opportunity to sort of more development for these other problems that might arise as you start to deploy a fleet of 12 to 16 trucks.
Yeah. Can you restate the question?
Yeah. So just as a few examples of like things that might arise. So you've got like fleet management or sort of predictive maintenance, like trucks go down and you're trying to figure out what truck is down and where to send teams to fix that truck, or for example, staff management on these trucks, which of course I think of as a software problem, but maybe isn't something that we would necessarily go and sub on one of the TAs, right? And so I guess during the development of the project, the sort of cross collaboration between all of the 5 TAs, and there might be like new sort of ventures that pop up to actually, or new like software programs that you would do to manage all this.
So the couple of questions in here that I'll try to answer. A performer can be a prime. Yep. A performer can be a prime on one TA and a sub on another TA. And so if that is, one solution that folks are thinking about, that's definitely appropriate. And to answer the other side of your question, there is very close collaboration between TA3 and TA2. And so that's expected and outlined in further detail in the solicitation.
Thank you.
But I want to, you asked a question around software for fleet management of the vehicles. Is it?
Yeah. So let's just say you're deploying 16 trucks at once.
Yeah.
Are they all just sort of manage their maintenance and everything in a region? Or are you managing all 16 trucks and saying, I've got one broken down over here, maybe I need to go replace that. And then there was a plug and play thing that was talked about earlier, like maybe I don't need as many CT scanners over in this region. And so I've now, decided that I can focus CT scanning enabled trucks in this region, this type of thing.
I think there are 2 different types of like softwares. The software that we're proposing is, a medical device plug and play architecture, right? So if you have a CT scanner, ultrasound, EKG machine, blood analyzer, to be able to plug in that device into that software architecture and to be able to get that device out into an EHR. I think the second part of your question is like an overachiever question. If we're the firm also wants to build a architecture for fleet management and diagnostics. Hey, that's great too, if you have the bandwidth to do that.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you. I had three questions. First is scope of TA1 is up there. I'm kind of curious, you listed a bunch of different machines. Is that like TA1 has already defined what those machines are? Like blood analyzer, gene sequencer, ultrasound. Is it defined?
So the TA1 performers are responsible for setting up and defining the clinical use cases. So they might say, we want like a maternal care use case. And so to do that, we need an ultrasound, we need blood pressure monitors. So they're going to define, right, that suite of devices and services that's required. And so that set of needs and services will be communicated to TA2. And they're the ones who will say, okay, we're building the CDP and this one needs to accommodate everything required for that particular use case. Is that part of your question?
I guess the question is, if one is making a proposal on TA3 and is unaware of what is happening in TA1, what scope does one address?
And that is such a great question. And it brings up the importance of the integrator in TA2 and the importance of all the other TAs being closely aligned with TA1. So everyone, not just TA3, is going to need to know what those use cases are and how they're going to fit in.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, that's true. So you won't know, right? You won't know what those use cases are. We have in the solicitation, we have said examples of compelling use cases are X, Y, and Z. And so I would encourage everyone to read those and prioritize your submissions accordingly. Anything else you would add?
I think you could look at just if I were proposing, thinking about, what are the devices that we see in hospitals right now?
Okay.
And
okay,
I think that would give, we're not going to be putting some supersonic device that a pill that has not FDA approved in it, that has some sort of like new fire-like format that is not defined. And yeah, it's going to be like what you see in the hospital, those devices there in terms of like imaging, diagnostics,
got it.
And what formats those data currently come in. I think that is a safe benchmark when you're thinking about writing up the abstract of.
Let me ask the second question, which you kind of.
These are great questions. I appreciate these questions, and it really will help us with other folks who have probably the same questions.
Again, a little pragmatic. I mean, there's a lot of great people in this room. I bumped into some of them over in the poster. How does everybody know who everybody else is so that when we can go, oh, wow, it would be really cool to work with you because you're building this rugged CT thing. I never even knew who you were. So how do you help that happen?
Yeah, please use the teaming page. That's our best solution so if you go to our Paradigm website, there's a blue button that says teaming page, and it's just a spreadsheet where there's a form. You can put in your information, tell us what you do, what TAs you think your work is most relevant to. And that sheet is public for everyone. So you can add your information and you can browse everyone else's. That's what we've been asking people to do. And we think it'll be super valuable for exactly what you're describing.
And at the risk of hogging a third question. So a lot of the work that we've been paying attention to is how do you do AI in medicine in a decentralized way, which I believe is key to how this is all going to happen. Unclear. This seems to be mostly about, okay, how do you get a hold of the data, which is cool. What TA, or is there a TA that's interested in how do we build AI, which ultimately has to be the answer as we move more rural, more global, not, training a bunch more physicians.
If you can find that angle in our program solicitation, then propose that.
But you don't think it's there?
We cannot comment generally on your question.
Okay. Okay. Right. That's right. Done. Thank you.
5 minutes, Julian.
Thank you. Julian Goldman from Mass General Hospital. That's a tall mic. Wow. So I'm just wanted to ask and maybe tease out the vision of the distinction between data that's going to go to the EHR, which is pretty clear in terms of the goals and the expectations from the MIOT platform. There are some things in the care delivery environment in which even CT is not a bad example, but there are examples in which you want to perhaps synchronize information right at the bedside. So imaging at a certain phase of respiration, maybe imaging at a certain part of the cardiac cycle, maybe looking at ECG for a trigger, right? Things that happen outside of the EHR historically and probably forevermore. It's just the wrong place for real time, especially with intermittent connectivity. Just wondering, is that part of the vision yet for the MIOT platform, or ultimately for the system and what it might be able to deliver out in these environments?
Can you give like an example?
Yes.
Like, are you talking like a bidirectional communication or?
So one example is the way things are laid out now. The CT data would go through a platform and go to the EHR. Same thing with vital sign data, and so maybe even from an infusion pump and something that's been administered. But if we look at what happens in the hospital, say, or in an imaging environment today, there can be a need to trigger the image with an ECG. So that information has to be bound together in real time, right? There could be other things that are triggered or timed and work together. Instead of only sending the data to the EHR. When you're trying to do these more advanced things, the data is integrated at that point.
Yeah.
So it's not just a
So the
one-way.
devices communicating with each other.
Say with each other, but I would also say maybe through an MIOT platform that's been designed to help the devices communicate with each other, as opposed to only sending the data to the EHR. It has different requirements, like different time requirements and performance requirements, especially if it's going to trigger something like an image. I just wondered if that's in the mix now with the thinking of for the CDP.
Yeah, so we have baseline metrics there, and I think this is, I would bucket this in like an overachieving type of question. So if you have a propose another like you're proposing another level, like put that in the abstract. And we will give feedback to that. We can't provide feedback like this right now, but again, with I think it's generalizable to all the technical areas. At minimum, you need to reach the metrics and the milestones. You can propose above and beyond that if it fits in the budget, and we will consider all of those. But again, we can provide direct feedback with an abstract.
Understood. Thank you.
Great. One more question.
Amy with Go and Bow and Proxit. I'm wondering about user experience design across TAs and systems engineering across TAs. It strikes me it's mentioned on each one, but concerned about the expertness of individuals going for it, if they're really going to offer expert usability testing or just kind of throw it in. So curious about the cross TA.
I think that's a pretty broad question. The user experience focus of the program is defined sort of throughout the solicitation in multiple different areas. So the TA2 integrator, like they're definitely going to be taking on a lot of that work, but it's also described in other pieces of the solicitation as well.
Okay. So TA2 is going to kind of step up as like a cross collaborator.
Well, I think, a lot of user experience requirements in each of the technical areas, because there's a lot of different types of users, right? There's the patients, there's the providers, there's the technicians, there's the communities, and we want to make sure each performer is thinking about this, right? Because this is a totally new type of platform, and we don't have a specific requirement for a general UX performer across all TAs, if that's your question, but built into each of the individual TAs that there is a heavy focus on UX.
The analogy I like to use, because I in a past life have been a product manager. I think there's a real analogy in product here where TA2 is the product management TA. The customer is TA1. And so TA2, the product manager, is collecting the customer requirements and actively soliciting those user experience surveys and data, right? There's a huge UX component to TA1 in terms of producing the data that TA2 can use. And then TA3, 4, 5, and subs to TA2, those are your dev teams. And so those are the ones that are executing on those product requirements. But ultimately, TA2 is the one that has to collect the requirements and see that they're implemented correctly. And so TA2 has this huge role in constant back and forth among all the TAs. Does that help?
Very much. Thank you.
All right, we're gonna take another short break and reconvene at 2:45 Mountain Time, and see you in a bit. Thanks.
We're going to go ahead and get started with the TA4 session. Couple of announcements, same ones that you've heard if you were in the first 3 sessions. Questions that have come up throughout the day. You can be a sub to multiple primes on the same TA. You can be a prime and a sub to a different prime on the same TA. The abstract template is included in the special notice document that was posted on SAM where we requested abstracts. Please read it thoroughly. One organization can submit 2 abstracts for the same TA. We're not providing any budget information. We're not providing caps for each award budget. We'll evaluate your budgets in accordance with evaluation criteria 4 listed in the solicitation. And we cannot, in person or via the Ask a Question site, we cannot give you feedback on your specific solution, your specific technology that you're developing. The abstracts is where you'll get that feedback. And now we'll start TA4.
All right, joining us on stage is Jeremy. He's also part of the Paradigm team. So this is focused on miniaturizing the CT scanner. So I think there's a lot of different approaches to it. Currently, the CT scan needs a whole room, and we want to be able to put it in a mobile health unit platform. There's I think a lot of different approaches to this. It's most likely going to involve removing that rotating gantry system and probably changing the X-ray sources and using an AI algorithm. There's probably other enabling technologies out there, but we think these are some of the ones that may be needed for this technical area. And why we're doing this is because of the radiology deserts in many parts of rural counties. We want to make this core imaging modality more accessible. There's been advances, as you know, in ultrasound and MRI to make them portable, but this form factor has remained unchanged for decades. Here are the milestones for this technical area. Those are in the program solicitation. So when you're reading it, just make sure that when you're submitting, that you have these in mind. And these are the metrics as well. And this technical area has a, is it on here, a cost sharing requirement towards the end. Okay. And this is a very specific TA, so we're going to open it up to questions from the floor and questions from the audience.
We've gotten a number of questions that you guys are welcome to come up that I just kind of wanted to address in advance. So one question has been related to the FDA approval process that might be involved in different parts of this program. Those are outlined specifically in more detail in TA4 than in some of the other TAs. And so I would just refer to the scope that's discussed there. There's also been a lot of questions about what approach should be taken in order to successfully complete this TA and a lot of other TAs. ARPA-H is agnostic to the approach. The goal is the thing that we describe, and we hope that proposers will bring innovative approaches and creative approaches to meeting those deliverables. Thank you. We'll take questions.
Hi, Bruno Demanda, G Healthcare. we had some uncertainty around the human subject studies. So the solicitation talks about human subject studies in year 4, but then it also talks about approval for human subject studies in year 5. So that seemed to be a conflict. Maybe is that related to the fact that there could be 2 possible paths? One is where it's a significant risk device and one is not a significant risk device, or?
Yes.
Okay. And how much overlap would there be between the clinical studies as part of the EV and the clinical studies as part of the TA4? Because there's two research systems. One goes in the EV and will be tested as part of TA1, I guess, and the other is tested as part of TA4.
We realize that this technology is going to take a few years to mature. So there is not going to be as much overlap with the TA2 or TA1 performers. The main interaction is going to be around those swap requirements, so they will work closely with the TA4 performer and hammer those details out, because you will need to know what the swap requirements are when building out, and vice versa. So they'll work collaboratively to agree on the size, weight, power requirements that aren't bending the law of physics. So we want to make sure those are in alignment right there. So I think this TA is going to be more independent than the other TAs. Similar with TA3 and 4 and 5 can live with more independence. Thank you.
Hi, Scott Schubert with Araneta. So the proposal should deliver 2 units for clinical testing, and the cost for that should be included in the proposal, correct? And the human subject testing clinical trial to get to FDA approval should be included, but any outcomes research is out of scope. Is that for this TA in particular?
Yes. So the human subject research, if proposer anticipates that being part of the scope of work, should be on the budget. Research that's not outlined.
Deliver the device, the human subjects to deliver the device.
Right. If that is needed in order to, meet all of the metrics and milestones and requirements, then it should be included.
Okay. And you will down select from the 2 proposers to one midstream during the 5-year period, correct?
Yes.
Okay. The technical requirements, size, weight, et cetera, are quite challenging. Obviously, you will any proposals that perhaps don't meet them, but are those an absolute minimum, or are you open to proposals that will be kind of not meeting those requirements, but may have other advanced capabilities that might have clinical advantages relative to some other proposals?
Proposals should meet the requirements that are outlined.
Jeremy, so you need to talk a little bit closer. Yeah. These are the goals that we have. Proposers can submit anything they want, but we're clear about these goals. So if a proposal comes in saying a 10% reduction, that's not in alignment with our goals. So yeah, I can't comment specifically on other things. I would just say submit an abstract and we will give you feedback on that.
Okay, thank you.
Wolfgang Kroll from Mass General Brigham, and I also have a finance or budget question, and that relates to delivering basically a prototype towards the end of the project. So usually that for FDA and so on requires manufacturing level production in order to go to the FDA and get clinical approval. So can the budget also look at setting up a partial manufacturing line to build these to effectively build the prototype?
So the question is, is it in scope of the budget to consider manufacturing a larger number of devices?
To basically, I would think that could be a question. My guess is maybe the answer is deliver a commercial transition report. That's probably where that is. But in order to build a prototype or a product that the FDA can evaluate and that you can submit a 510K for, it has to be basically equivalent to what you're going to build in production. So as part of that, you do need to set some amount of production lines and really set that up effectively. And there's costs associated with that. So my question is, can that be part of the budget that's proposed?
I believe it can, but you should also note that there is a significant cost sharing component to TA4's activities. And so things that are going to materially benefit the transition for the company are also should be included within that type of cost scoping.
Got it. So for the abstract, we can, we'll have to work through the details of that. So it sounds like it should be, but think about the cost sharing that may happen towards the end of that.
Yeah, understanding there's a lot of ambiguity in how the last phase of the program is going to look for. What we would suggest is to put everything that you believe is going to be necessary to meet those deliverables into the budget, and then also a plan for cost sharing in phase 3.
Fair. And I think the abstract, I take it, we can kind of also attempt to get feedback on what we propose.
Okay, yeah. So the two different prototypes, I mean, one is not going to be put into the CDP, and you're going to do testing on it in whatever clinical environment or testing environment. The other one, we hope by the end of the program, is something where we can demonstrate its placement in the CDP and show that this is a thing that is, if not usable at the moment, at least future tech that can be part of and can help in the transition of this technology in the years to come.
I mean, yes. So just to be clear, we have a goal of we want to make a much smaller miniaturized CT scan to increase access by the end of this program. And then there needs to be a commercial transition strategy around that. There's different paths to get there, and we realize that. So we want to be as flexible as possible and allow for those proposals to come in with what you think the best path forward is. But the North Star, the goal is to build a scanner that is way smaller than a current scanner out there, so we can increase access. And it can be used in scenarios that a current CT scanner cannot be used. I mean, there's, as you can imagine, there's a lot of different applications for this, even outside of rural healthcare delivery. And yeah, but I appreciate those questions.
Ray Lee from UNC Chapel Hill. Technical Aim 4 has some references to Technical Aim 5, but I was looking back at Technical Aim 5 to try to understand how those interact. Could you speak to that?
Can you speak specifically about
It just references how the software or something is supposed to talk to Technical Aim 5. So that's what I was just curious about, if that's something we need to worry about.
I think that's something we can review and address in the FAQ page. Thank you for bringing this up.
Like, is your question around the intelligent task guidance system has to operate with a future CT scanner, or
how do those interact? Is that system going to run the system, interpret images?
There's, again, I think with these TAs 3, 4, and 5, there's more independence in these technologies that need to mature, because we realize that they're very different technologies. They're going to have very different timelines for maturity and integration. Again, I think that is one of these goals, that eventually an intelligence task guidance system that can help a healthcare worker operate devices such as a future CT scanner, an ultrasound, an MRI machine. And that was more illustrative than prescriptive, I would say.
Add something to that. the collaboration that goes on within this program should allow TA5 and TA4 to understand where they're both going, and hopefully will allow the builder of the new CT scanner to get some human-centered design concepts in there that will make it easier. At the same time, the TA5 will understand how this machine works and will be able to try and upskill technicians who are not experts. And that melding of the two is hopefully part of the secret sauce of the program.
Got it. So there's no, and practically, as a radiologist, I was a little concerned, but there's no image interpretation as a part of TA4. If TA5 wants to, that's great, but that's not
correct.
Yeah. Great. Thank you.
Two questions. You mentioned the technology to be carbon nanotube. Are you open to others?
Yes, that was just an example of enabling technology, but it is not a prescriptive technology that must be used. There's other sorts of X-ray sources out there that pulse. There can be other approaches to this outside of that. So yeah, we're open.
And can you also comment on the cost share aspect of it the gentleman brought up?
I'm going to bump that over to one of you all.
I'm sorry if my microphone's been a little quiet. So we did just address the cost share. The third phase of the program is focused on regulatory approval and transition. And so our expectation, as someone had previously asked, is that there are going to be a lot of costs related to that are ambiguous at this point in time and may sort of be an appropriate moment for cost sharing as you're thinking about transitioning into other markets and gaining regulatory approval with other sorts of research and development. So what we would suggest is put everything on the budget that is needed to meet the metrics and milestones and requirements, even if it's not something that has been addressed in the solicitation. And also proposers should plan to cover half of those costs in that phase.
Also, the novel device like this probably has difficulty of marketing, sales, distribution, replacement, all of that. And you're talking about millions of dollars right after the FDA, not before the FDA. So I'm just suggesting cost share that could be coming after the FDA rather than before the FDA.
I appreciate the concern about that, but I think this is a very unique technical area that you probably haven't seen invested in this technology. So yes, there are some constraints there, but noted.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Also, if I might add, part of what the program is doing is potentially providing a market for these devices. And so we're doing a lot of lift already, and it's hopefully to your benefit, and we're a partner in this development and transition.
Yeah, all irons are basically sunk cost for all the health providers. They already paid for it. So unless the lifetime of the system is sort of that close to the end, it would be difficult. I mean, we are in this business. It would be difficult to convince, throw the old machine out while it's working. And by the way, we're going to give you a portable one. So I'm just
if it weren't difficult, we wouldn't be here. Yeah. So we go after moonshots in healthcare, and we know this is a moonshot. So
I agree. Thank you.
Help us.
Hi, Jamal Tumbas from University of Colorado. Regarding a budget, a quick clarification. The total budget will be for the whole project, but your funding will be to the down selection phase, which will happen at the time point of 24 months.
Adrian, here, I'm going to give you.
Yes, so your budget and what we will award will be the full 5 years of the program. Initial funding, depending on TA, will be 18 to 24 months. And then additional funding will be provided based on whether there's a down selection, there might not be, depending on the TA, right? But additional funding will be provided as the program moves forward.
I see. Since there is a down selection in TA4.
Then it would be based on that down selection. Yes. We're not going to fund if a performer doesn't get down selected, right? Then we'll just have to pull that money back. So yeah.
Just a follow-up question for the down selection time point, which line it refers to on the table over there? Is it the end of 24 months?
Can we go back a couple of slides on this one? It's actually, if you go all the way back to the TA2 slide, that will show exactly the time point. Okay, perfect. So the TA4 is at the 2-year point here. And so that's the timeline for down selections is described here in the solicitation too.
Nice. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
This is Krishnan from SRI. Could you shed some light on how potentially you would evaluate a solution which is, say, 70% meeting the swap metrics, but not along the way of the FDA process already, versus something which is meeting it maybe 30%, but is far along the FDA process? Because, I mean, as much as you can, just to get an idea of whether someone who is able to meet the swap metrics but is not along the FDA way should not even consider applying for an abstract.
Yeah, I would say that in general that we expect the proposers to be able to meet all of the deliverables that were outlined. And there are areas where we say, a strong proposer will do this. And, there's been some discussion about what like overachieving might look like, which is certainly considered strong. But if it is outlined as a metric, milestone, or requirement, then it is a metric, milestone, or requirement.
Sure, no, I understand in the context of delivering on the program, yes, but like before even being selected, if you're not along the FDA process, should you not even apply?
Oh, if you're not currently seeking FDA approval for a device, that's not something that's outlined there. We don't require the FDA process to have been initiated before the work starts.
Okay, just clarifying. Thank you.
However, in terms of something being only 30% along the swap metrics, if it's something that is 30% and will be hopefully progressing further to miniaturize it, if it's something where the technology is such that it will stop at 30%, that's a very different thing.
Thank you.
We have one more question here.
Right. Thank you. So my name is Joey from Canada Medical Research. So in this TA, since it's a very novel geometry or requirements, so I expect there will be trade-offs of image quality. So is from the program, is there guidance of the targeted clinical application? So to guide the proposer of what kind of trade-offs to make?
Our expectation is not that this device will compromise image quality, but we do understand that there are certain types of imaging studies that might not be possible. But the outlining that this is a body CT, we're looking for interesting approaches and for some more description of what types of imaging would be possible at the same quality that we have today.
Okay. Thank you.
The metrics specify a minimum standard. There are many technologies that far surpass that minimum standard at the moment, but for this machine, just surpassing the minimum standard is the metric.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so I appreciate those. We need some trade-offs, but there's some smart people in this room I know working on this, and much smarter than me and smart people online. So I think stronger proposals will get to, obviously we're going to not compromise image quality and meet those swap requirements. Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, this is the least controversial technical area. We're going to jump over for a little bit of a break. We'll resume at 3:20 with our final technical area, intelligent task guidance.
I love all the conversations that are happening today. I think this is going to lead to some wonderful teaming arrangements. All right, if you've attended any of the sessions so far, you've heard my spiel. We're going to go through it one last time. Based on questions that have come up today, an organization can be a sub to multiple primes on a single TA. An organization can be a prime and a sub on a single TA. Abstract templates, the template is available. It is included in the special notice document that's posted on SAM where we requested the abstracts. We are not providing budget information for the program. We're not providing caps for individual awards. We're just going to evaluate your budgets as outlined in the eval criteria in the solicitation. A single organization can submit 2 abstracts under a single TA, and we cannot give either in here in person or online on the FAQ site, we cannot give feedback on specific technology, specific solutions. That's what the abstract is for. You'll get your feedback there.
All right. Thanks for joining us for this last technical area. I really appreciate everyone coming out for this event. For the folks listening online, I'm going to jump to the poster sessions. Again, I'm almost through all of them, so I really appreciate all the posters, a lot of creativity out there, and really encourage everyone to meet folks here as well. This is a nice opportunity for us to meet in real life and hopefully team as well. So this last, why do we put this technical area in there? It's not like we're doing a lot here, right? We're miniaturizing a CT scanner, building a whole new redesign of a care delivery system, building an interoperable software system. This is to address current and future challenges in healthcare worker shortage. It's amplified in rural America. And so when we build these units and when they're all functioning, we want to be able to decrease the human footprint of these mobile health units to make it as easy as possible for a healthcare worker with as minimal training to operate the functions in this platform. So what makes a strong performer here? This is all in our program solicitation. There's just another way that we repackage this for you. You know, one strategy that we want to highlight is you can think of the entire inside of the mobile health unit vehicle. Think of that as a potential site for a hardware platform, right? You could think of existing off-the-shelf technologies and VR, AR, sensors. That environment can be a simulated environment to provide real-time task guidance to a healthcare worker inside of that unit. Again, these are metrics and milestones that we put in the program solicitation. So these are probably some of the most important parts of the program solicitation. And please, when you're writing your abstract and submitting it, pay attention to what we are looking for in this 5-year program. These are our metric slide. Again, with this technical area, there is a down select as well. And we have allowed in this technical area, we're inviting many different approaches here. So that's why we're not so prescriptive in what sort of approach that you're going to use to increase the skills of healthcare workers. And we did that purposely because we know that there are researchers, performers out there who are approaching this in very different ways. And we're excited to get proposals with these different types of approaches. So we're going to invite folks, again, like the other technical areas, to come up to the mic and ask a question, and we'll answer them on stage. Thank you.
There, as you guys are walking up, I'm just going to address a question we've gotten a few times about this TA. So the question is about FDA approval process. We are not, the FDA, so we're not able to facilitate that on behalf of the performers, but we don't expect performers to walk in with something that's already FDA approved. The milestones around FDA or regulatory approval are outlined in the actual TA description.
Some questions surrounding the operator satisfaction. I imagine a lot of the operator satisfaction comes from performers in technical technical area 1, which are providing a lot of clinical service. And I guess two-part question. One is a lot of is kind of in the provision of care. If there is artificial intelligence or insights that are being provided outside of the clinical workflow, that is the biggest barrier to operator satisfaction. How much requirement is there for Technical AIM 5 to integrate with Technical AIM 3 in terms of the support and the guidance it provides be part of the interoperable software? Second, how can we evaluate the usability?
Wait, my cells are functioning slowly. Let's take this one at a time. So your first question is the interplay between this TA and TA3, which is the medical IoT TA.
Yes.
And specifically, can you
just if purpose of this is to help upscale the skills of care provider, it would create a friction and barrier if the support and the insights are coming outside of softwares within which and outside of paradigm within which they're providing care. So if I have to log in outside of one portal where I'm doing clinical management and log into a different platform to be able to get insights that that TA5 is providing me, that's going to make this very unusable. So how much are part of the requirement integration between TA5 and TA3?
Got it. Okay. I think there's flexibility there. We're not requiring TA5 performers to work within the software architecture proposed by TA3. That would be a little bit unreasonable because we don't know what TA3 is developing. Mm-hmm. So we're going to allow those to develop in parallel.
And is it in scope for there to be, especially if operator satisfaction is being evaluated from year 1 onwards, but the actual care, clinical care from the care delivery platform is not being provided until year 3 of the 5-year program? Do you envision having a learning laboratory where care delivery platform 1 is not being deployed into the rural setting, but is just being
correct? Yeah, because of the different timelines that we envision that this technology is going to be developed in a simulated environment outside of the care delivery platform until it matures, but then towards the end of the program, looking at opportunities for integration.
Perfect. Thank you.
Questions, everyone? There's only. All right.
Took it down because I'm short. I got it. Yeah. So I think on page 27 of the solicitation, it talks about TA5 conducting work in an instrumented mock-up. Should the cost for the instrumented mock-up be carried in the TA2 performers work or in TA5? Like, is TA2 expected to build or provide that? I looked back through, I couldn't find it.
You read the program solicitation. I think that's great. Yeah. Jeremy, do you had a?
Not a prototype, right? But like, okay. Just want to make sure included, excluded. Thank you.
Yeah, we're gonna summarize that.
Yeah. Yeah, I was gonna say like a test kitchen. It's a place where you can, it has it's a similar use case to what TA1 is going to have to do, but those things do not have to be the same. I did want to just repeat really quick. We answered this kind of a question about what types of work belong in which TA. And so I'm just going to repeat the answer to that. We gave this in TA1 just for this overview. So TA1 performers provide care and are accountable for collecting and communicating device-related and other requirements for their CDP-based care, their use cases, and they communicate those to TA2 performers. And then TA2 performers as the integrator own the development and integration of devices that are required for the TA1 use cases. That devices required by TA1 that can't be developed in time to meet timelines specified in the PFs won't meet the needs of the program. But there's a couple of exceptions, and that's where TA5 falls. So devices specifically required for staff upskilling and intelligent task guidance, that's covered in TA5. That's not something that's covered under that's not required by TA1 is what I'm saying, or TA2. And then similarly, the miniature CT scanner is covered in TA4, and then device interoperability, software infrastructure is covered in TA3. So just so that if you're a person who's like, I've got a device and I don't know if it relates better to TA2 or TA3 or TA5, look to those sections of the PS so you can figure out which of those sections are owned by which TA.
Just a question around technical or skill breadth. How much of this should be a technological solution versus an educational solution? Maybe providing, simulation environments or educational environments for low-skilled providers to increase skill versus a technology that is actually a product which is isolated from the individual.
I'm not sure there's a firm, I think it's a fuzzy line, right? Like an education product could be enhanced by technology. And so I think that's what we want to see in people's proposals and their abstracts, where what we're imagining is this. It's the analogy that we've used is like YouTube on steroids, right? Where like when I wanted to learn how to change the oil in my scooter, I find a YouTube video and it tells me and I follow that, but it's not there with me. It's not like, hey, Carlin, you that's not the right screw, right? You move your hand over here and this is, that's what you want. Like it's not interactive with me. So in that kind of, is that an education product? Yep. Is it a tech product? Yep.
Thank you. And then one of the questions on
I just want to say, the name of our agency is the Advanced Research Project Agency for Health. So we're into technology. Yeah.
Thank you. So the other question is around hardware or large hardware, like robotics and so on. What is the feasibility with integrating with TA2? Because some of these technologies may not be independently working without a continuous power source or very large space to operate?
Well, great question. So yeah, T2 and T5 have to work together, and especially with the swaps size weight power requirements, right? So you can't propose something that's only going to work on the NASA space station, right? It has to work within that specific mobile health unit delivery vehicle, and within those there's going to be specific size and weight constraints for that. So, but I tried to emphasize before, you can think of it as a whole interior of the vehicle as a hardware platform. So, but we realize that some of these technologies can't line up from day one. And so there's some independence there for TA5 to develop this technology and approach, and not force them to integrate from day one. But at the end of the 5-year program, we want to see a complete package. So the closer you can get to full integration or pathway towards that, and then the program, the stronger the proposal.
Thank you.
Hi, SR International, Jason Tan. I have a question regarding the clinical service. I understand TA5 need to align the clinical service which is proposed by TA1. And TA1 has about like more than 9 clinical service in their metrics. So does that mean that TA5 will also need to cover all these 9 different clinical metrics during this program? If so, then the BLA only emphasized about the proposal must propose a specific the clinical service. So I feel this kind of discrepancy, should be the TA5 performer also proposer also to cover and propose a different clinical service based on our understanding.
Great question. This question has come up. Did we form a response on the FAQ yet? If not, I could. Okay. Again, you were, it's going to be impossible for a TA5 performer to predict what TA1 clinical use case is. So a great point there. And so in the abstract, we're not expecting that, obviously, but we are interested in what those methods are that you're going to use. And I think I said this before, just imagine like stuff that's done in a hospital. Those are going to be some of the clinical use cases proposed. And yeah, those methods may change from, doing an ultrasound to putting an IV to running a CT scanner. But I think the technological approach is going to not vary too much depending upon those different technologies, but also it should be a platform technology that allows for a healthcare worker to still perform those use cases, right? So we don't want a very narrow technology that's only going to fit one or two clinical use cases.
Yeah, that's my understanding, but I just see the BA only mentioned about a specific clinical service for TA5, which is kind of, create some gap here. So,
okay, one, Adriel does not want us to refer to this as a BA, it's a program solicitation. So just let you know, we're moving away from that language.
Okay.
And so there's some nuances there. And yes, we appreciate that tension there where the TA5 performer does not know what the TA1 clinical services are. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, but this is also actually, kind of a test the TA5 performer, how much the understanding about the medical domain and the medical procedure and where our technology could cover these different areas. So which is, if possible, then we can also mention that as well.
Amazing. You answered my question. That's great.
Yes.
Should have you come up here and answer field these questions.
Just to follow up from before, in the PS, there is some ambiguity about who the operator is when we are evaluating operator satisfaction. I imagine, at least in the transition phase, the operators are the TA1 task force, or no, it's independent of clinical staff.
Yes, the operators for the technology do not have to be the TA1 clinical performers.
So it could be a PCA that's using the technology in New York and being satisfied with it.
I'm sorry.
There has been some confusion around the phase 3 requirements and also sort of the entire TA that you guys will see some answers in FAQ to follow as well as in the final solicitation. And thanks to everyone who has provided some feedback. We're not expecting this to go into TA1 vehicle and then immediately be used by all of the TA1 performers, nor are we expecting for this to cover all of the tasks and services TA1 is providing. This should be a generalizable system that meets the needs of users who are using a CDP. And TA1 is a natural, group of people, and they are also required to work closely with the TA5 performer to, provide information and user insights that will help. So it doesn't have to be specifically their task, but it should be a generalized task that is like an effective sort of clinical use case in this environment.
Yeah, this technology can mature independently in the early years. Yeah, thank you.
Hi, Normal Course in Coro Health. Two questions. Number one, is it safe to assume that the local, state and local certification regulations that are in place that sometimes vary by state, that those would apply individually based on where the CDP is being deployed?
Can you rephrase that question? Is it specific to this TA or?
It is the skills in particular. See, there's an RN on CDP.
Yeah, we definitely understand we have 50 states. We probably have 50 different ways of regulations around who can perform what. For example, can an advanced nurse practitioner do X clinical service? Can a tech do this? And that those vary state to state. And we're not looking for that sort of specificity right in the beginning with this technical area.
In the phase 3, we've outlined that the TA5 performer would work with another group to do these studies. So that would be a research study, and that group may be affiliated already with the TA5 performer, or maybe a group that is contracted by the TA5 performer, but should be on the budget and chosen in the proposal.
Yeah. It's more of as Jeremy was saying, of a proof of concept of a intelligent task guidance system that can upskill healthcare workers. And it's great that you're already thinking about regulations and payments and state-to-state variability. That's awesome that you're thinking about that. Definitely down the road, but we understand that this technology is going to take some significant years of development.
Okay, that's fair. And just so I'm understanding correctly, I think the point that the previous gentleman was making is it safe to assume that much of this will initially start with a human and then transition to intelligent task guidance, or not necessarily?
I think there's always going to be a human in this, but it's to or upskill that human in the loop.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Thanks. Hi, I'm Allison Greenberg. I'm with World Health. 2 questions, easy one first. So when it comes to a conversational interface used in TA5, and you're talking about TTS or any sort of like conversational based task guidance, are you taking into account the influx of migrants to rural populations? Like, is multilinguality table stakes for this?
So we're talking about audio guidance for a healthcare worker who may be not.
Sure, or for patients to be able to interact with clinicians who are only English speaking.
Yeah. So the intelligence task guidance system is not patient facing. It is for the healthcare worker operating services on the vehicle. It's not going to interact with a patient. So.
But on the clinician side as well, like English and Spanish as a baseline, or does that not factor in?
Yes, I think if it's designed correctly, the language should not be a problem.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
And then second question is more about the type of clinician we're looking at and the use of the term clinical more broadly.
Sorry, one other concept on that, what you previously said.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily the case that it has to use language at all. And intelligent task guidance could be image-based, tactile, any number of things. So there are ways to get around that. It's a choice to do it with language.
Thanks. Yeah, and then in terms of the use of the term clinician, I asked this earlier. I think now this is the right time to ask. So for quote clinicians, but in particular subclinical providers, community health workers, care navigators, doulas in the maternal health space, to what extent are you looking at solutions that upskill those folks? Just knowing that the clinician shortage, it makes it hard to upskill when there's not somebody to upskill.
Yeah, I think all of the above. Again, I think it's going to matter. I think the specifics of that clinical use case are going to really make an impact on it. Like, for example, we can't have a non-medical worker perform a insertion of a central venous catheter on a patient with sepsis, right? Probably there's no state that's ever going to allow that. But it may allow a technician to perform an ultrasound, for example, or it may allow a community healthcare worker to operate certain non-clinical functions of a mobile health unit. So again, we're not going to do anything that's going to be illegal in the vehicle. You know, we're going to conform to standards, and we're not going to decrease the level of care that is expected through intelligent task guidance system. Like if a healthcare worker uses it, then it needs to deliver the same type of care as you would expect as if they weren't using as normal standard of care.
Got it. Thanks.
Last question.
Yep, one more.
Is geography important? Target geography important? Southern Texas where there's versus Central California, or it's not? Or do they have to be all in the same geography? And if that is the case, can we count on reimbursement, the things they are available for Medicaid, DSREP available already on the code for health economic aspect of this or not?
Sorry, are you talking about TA5 intelligent task guidance?
Question on TA5. That's
okay. This is a trick question then. Okay, so this is a general question, more of a TA1 type of question.
Is that right?
Okay. Yeah. Part of the, so is your question is, do we need to focus only on California or other states? Like I wasn't.
The question is, two of them you mentioned, Appalachia and Alaska. I'm wondering if other low resources, southern Texas and
great question. So those are just examples where, you know, we want, yeah, just examples of regions that we envisioned healthcare delivery to happen. But yeah, again, if you read this solicitation, focus on a rural health professional shortage area as defined by HRSA. Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah.
You guys did a very good job. I'm saying that in behalf of everybody here. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. These are all great questions. Do you have a comment, Jeremy? Close. Okay. Oh, online questions.
We did have a number of online questions. Some of them did get addressed during this session, and also questions that were submitted by folks here in person that we will be able to address on the FAQ page. I'm sorry we couldn't get to all of them, but we do really appreciate how many questions we got and a lot of feedback too. So thank you.
Yeah, I just want to thank you for all your questions, for your time today. This helps us to inform our program. And again, you know, we're on a mission to, you know, fundamentally redesign how care is delivered in rural America and other parts of the country. I think the technology that we develop, the new service lines we develop, can be applicable in other settings and international settings as well. We know you have busy schedules, so we appreciate you making the time to come out to Arizona. For those online, thanks for joining. We hope we gave you enough bio breaks during today as well, and we'll be around. I want to thank my team here. Everyone has been working so hard, so give a shout out to them. So we'll adjourn for today. Thank you.
Please join the teaming page. One more plug for that. It's updated about twice a week, so don't expect your entries to show up in real time. There's a process there, and that table is public. So if someone were to grab all of those email addresses and connect the whole group for further discussion, then that's a thing that could happen. So thanks, everyone.